Hi, welcome to Ben and Curt Till It Hurts. I'm Ben.
And I'm Curt.
And we have another guest.
Yay.
Very excited. Who's here? Who's here? Who's in the room?
Leah Douglas is here.
Leah Douglas, what do you do? What's up with you?
I teach in real life, but sometimes I do stand-up. I don't know why I'm looking at the mic. I'll look at you guys.
Maybe we should be looking at the mic. Maybe none of us should look at each other.
Take a lot of pressure out of the room from these people I've known for a long time.
So yeah, Leah is a professional stand-up comedian, and therefore the most famous person in the room right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, for sure. This is like having an actual celebrity on the show.
Yes.
Okay, let's calm down.
Let's not go too crazy. But, yeah, we're real happy to have Leah. We've both known Leah for a long time, since college.
We're co-workers. We were for like 5 minutes.
We were RAs. Are we allowed to say that? Are you embarrassed?
Ongoing litigation.
Yeah.
I
don't know the
my
rules.
history as an RA.
Don't mess up our chance to be on the cover of the Farmington First.
Yes, that's the dream.
I already did because I called us RAs, just so the audience would know what we were talking about. But
So,
last
episode, part 4 of...
But it's part 3 of the Tarantino series. You already fucked
No,
up.
it's part 4 of the Tarantino thing.
This is part 4. Oh, sorry. I thought you meant last episode.
Oh.
Okay, no, yes, this is... Sorry, Curtis.
What do I mean? Now I'm
together.
confused.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
Shut it down, we're starting it over.
I know exactly what you mean, and I'm sorry for what I...
Leah, I'm so sorry
ashamed
about
of my words and deeds.
Anyway. Part 4. Is it part 4?
This is part 4 of the Tarantino episodes.
The final conclusion. We've reviewed all the movies. Now we just have to talk about it.
Yeah. But first...
Yeah.
Let's do our check-in. Curtis, what have you been up to?
It's been a good weekend for trap music. Both Gucci Mane and Lil Yachty had CDs come out yesterday. Albums, not just CDs. And I haven't listened to them all yet, but I've heard like 5 or 6 songs off each one and read reviews. Gucci Mane's pretty awesome. Lil Yachty, no, not
Do you think
awesome.
the bubble's about to burst on Yachty?
Lil Yachty was the brightest burning star.
Stop saying that, Curtis.
That-
Little Yachty.
Do I say little?
You said Little Yachty.
I don't know.
Sorry. He was, though.
He was, and I think it burned out pretty quick.
Yeah.
I think that Sprite commercial is where it,
See,
Isn't he in, like, Target commercials with Carly Rae Jepsen, too?
See, because I saw that.
It Takes Two or something.
I saw that Sprite commercial, and I was like, get it, Yachty. You are winning right now.
well, that's what I was saying. It was the peak, and now it's all...
Yeah, after the Sprite commercial, it's all downhill. Can't wait for our Sprite commercial.
I know. It's going to be good. We'll get to hang out with LeBron. Was he in that, or was it...
I think so.
I don't know.
Or is it... No, it was the same commercial.
Yeah.
I've never seen the commercial.
What? Pause the show.
Shut it down. We got some shit to take care of.
Start it over
Next
again.
week will be our commercial cast.
I think it was starring LeBron, featuring Lil Yachty.
Yeah, okay. That's fair.
That makes sense.
The only other thing, I'm not like a cutting edge gamer, so I was playing some Grand Theft Auto 5. And,
that's a good one.
I've never been able to get into Rockstar games, and I don't know what like clicked, but I finally like started. I've played it before, and I started playing it, and I got like super into Grand Theft Auto 5 for the first time ever. So that's fun that I finally get to enjoy that way after everybody else doesn't care anymore.
I did the same thing last year, specifically with GTA 5.
Oh, good.
It's a good game.
Yeah.
Like, maybe saying it's a good game is a little much. It's a good, like, world.
Yeah.
It's a good level design thing, like, facsimile of Southern Californian architecture that you can kind of drive around in and cause chaos in.
It is fun to. I jumped a motel this morning with a dirt bike.
Yeah.
But I've played like every Rockstar game that's come out for like 10 minutes, and then I'm like, not for me. Like, this is the first one that I've like, I can do this. Mm-hmm. That's about it for me.
Yeah.
You?
Yeah. The continuing saga of Nier Automata. Still playing it.
Part 4 of Tarantino, part 3.
Part 3 of Nier Automata. Automata cast. Nier Automata, the video game, the Japanese video game that I've been playing, that I have not been too keen on, that I'm mostly continuing to play because people have kept telling me how good it is, and I'm like, man, gamers are stupid. Gamers don't know what good things are. That's why they think this is good. 16 hours in, the game fucking changed, man. That game rocks. That game is incredible.
You had to get through the gate.
It's... You play through the same game twice. Like, spoilers for Nier Automata if anyone's concerned about that listening, right? Just chill.
Pause it.
We'll put in a time tag. There'll be a beep here, and you're just going to go for it until you hear another beep. But You play through the same game twice as the two main characters, two androids. And it sucks, basically. Like, the story sucks, the gameplay sucks, everything is kind of bad about it. But there are just these, like, little shining moments of brilliance. Like, at the end. And so I've seen this scene twice, and I loved it both times. It sticks out like crazy. There's, like, this lady android and this little boy android, 2B and 9S. And they develop this, like, relationship. It's kind of a Mulder-Scully dynamic, you know? She's, like, all about killing. He's like, maybe machines have feelings. At the end, blah, 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 he has a virus, like a computer virus inside of him. And he's like, I need you to kill me so that my computer virus doesn't get uploaded to the bunker. And, like, it just steps away from the bombast. It steps away from the, like, big blown-out explosions and shit. And just holds for 20 seconds as this lady android, dressed like a schoolgirl, like a Victorian Gothic Lolita schoolgirl, straddles this android who looks like maybe a 13, 14-year-old boy and strangles him to death. It's amazing. And it's like nothing else in the game. But then you play that game twice, and then you get to the real Nier Automata, which is all shit like that. It's like all this mixed up in death and sex symbolism, and like it went from being all of the worst things about video games in general, but specifically Japanese video games, the like over-explaining, the over-tutorializing, all that stuff, and it became all the best stuff about Japanese video games and video games in general, which is like a total mastery of symbolism, like a complete lack of fear about misusing symbols. Just like throw it all in there, like all the stuff that's in my head, I'm gonna put it on this screen in just like a raw form. Just all my peculiarities, it's a great game. It's a great game. I'm still playing it. I've not yet finished it, but I'm really excited about it now. Nier Automata. If a person likes video games, they should play that video game. If you're a cutting-edge gamer like me, you owe it to yourself to play Nier Automata.
If you're like me, just go back and play Left 4 Dead again for the 1000th time.
Oh, God.
What about you, Leah? What kind of stuff do you like to do?
Well, yesterday I noticed that there were new Sherlock episodes on Netflix, so I spent most of the day watching that. I haven't watched the last one, so that's season 4. The first episode was not great. I don't know if you guys watched that.
My wife, Megan, your friend and mine, saw, as you did, like, oh shit, the new episodes? Does this mean really new, or is this like Netflix lying and they got some shit that I already pirated a year ago or something? No, new episodes. And she got about 10 minutes in, and then said, I can't do this. Yeah, the first episode is not great, and I think there's some interpersonal acting stuff going on there, because I don't know if you guys know, but I'm pretty sure Martin Freeman and Amanda Abington were married, and they had an amicable separation, but they're still married on the show when the season starts. So it's like, you can tell that there's like a wall there, like, and like there's like shit going on with their characters. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. But I did. What, shit? Yeah, I don't know. I think I said like
you can
swearing.
You can say whatever you want.
But there's a big stuff going on with their characters, but it just like you can tell that there's like just like a wall there. Or the writing's gotten worse. I don't know.
The writing has definitely gotten worse. I noticed like really bad writing while I was looking at it.
Not to rail on Stephen Moffat, but I think that happens.
I would love to rail on Stephen Moffat.
I think the first 3 seasons were amazing, and the same thing happened with Doctor Who. It's like the David Tennant stuff was great, and then he's like, oh, people are super into me, and then like just starts throwing in like, is this going to make you feel stuff? Is this going to make you feel stuff? I'm like, no, it's not, because you haven't done any character development. So.
The thing that I noticed that I picked out as bad writing was a bit towards the beginning of the first episode when they're talking about like, oh, how did you doctor this footage to make it look like Sherlock didn't shoot the guy that he shot at the end of the last season? We got to get Sherlock out of this tight scrape. How are we going to do it? Oh, we just doctored it. We have the ability to do that. You know we have the ability to do that because we hijacked all these other TV screens. It's like, no, you need to explain that. You can't just use something else that you haven't explained to get away with not explaining something that you don't know how to explain. It's complete fantasy bullshit.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
But I have been watching an actual good show, which is Handmaid's Tale, and that does make me feel things, mostly sad things, in fear.
I don't know that one.
Are you through that yet?
Well, it's not through.
Oh, it's not.
They're doing it one episode a week on Wednesdays on Hulu, and I'm using somebody else's Hulu account to watch that.
That you shouldn't say.
Keep that on the down low. We'll edit that out. Yeah. Hulu will come down on me like a fucking sack of bricks.
And you had Music Corner, but I don't know. Can we talk about books?
You can talk.
I talk about books on the regular.
Anything that you're into hobby-wise.
I read 2 YA novels this week. One was really good, and one was really horrible. I read Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, which I think was made into a movie. I can't imagine it was good, but the book was really good. And then I read The Beginning of Everything, which was maybe one of the worst books I've ever read.
That one has an adaptation coming out right now.
I saw one of your Instagram posts about that.
What's wrong with it? What's bad? The movie looks very bad.
It's like John Green fan fiction without like the literary like strength of John Green. It's just like, how about we have a manic pixie dream girl and like an average boy, but he like reads a lot, so they talk in this really sophisticated way, and it's just so many bad things, and there's a lot of just like misogyny. Like, you're supposed to hate his ex-girlfriend because she's a stereotypical girl, but this new girl, she sometimes wears boy sweaters.
So wait, it's the fucking Taylor Swift "You Belong With Me" song just in book form?
Yeah, it's something. And then there's like no conclusion. It's just like, oh, here's the mystery, solved it, the end.
Word.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. I've been reading half of A Yellow Sun, a book that I borrowed from Leah. I was maybe a little skeptical through the first half, but it's gotten really good. It's picked up a lot. I'm learning a lot about Biafra. I'm learning a lot about what it was like to live in a country that was undergoing war by starvation. Like, I've never really had to deal with starvation.
Neither have I.
Neither, yeah. by the solemn shaking of heads, I can tell that neither of either of you.
Yeah, not to be like trivial, but sometimes I would skip breakfast in high school.
Yeah. She, the author, Chimamanda Adichie, does a really great job. She didn't live through that time, but she heard about it from her parents. She's a Nigerian author. So her parents were involved in the civil war that involved the creation of Biafra. And some of them were there. Some of them died because the Nigerian army used starvation as a weapon of war. Yeah. Great book, though.
Yeah.
Super good. Good love story. Anyway.
I'm kind of sad now.
Glad we just brought that down.
Yeah, now that we've brought the energy down, let's talk about...
We should have started with that and then moved to the TV. And Lil Yachty.
Yeah, Lil Yachty is good to bring the energy back up.
Campy.
Yeah.
So I guess we can get right into our Tarantino wrap up.
Yeah. Let's start with... So we have a few orders of business, right?
Yeah.
On the agenda for today. We're going to start with what we've been calling superlatives.
Yes.
Things like just best elements of Tarantino movies, because that's a fun thing to do after you've watched a director's entire body of work. You know, you take the pieces that you really enjoyed and recognize them individually.
You know what's weird is like that was the first, after you said that was the first time I realized that we did just watch his entire...
Yeah.
Oh man, that really just...
There's a lost Tarantino film. Have you
No.
This? There's a lost Tarantino
What?
film. Well, so
Give my life purpose, Ben.
Have you not been watching the fucking Charlie Rose interviews that I've been sending to you, Curtis? The hour-long... all this stuff I know about Tarantino is because he's done an interview with Charlie Rose pretty much after every movie that he's made, starting, I think, with Reservoir Dogs, maybe starting with Pulp Fiction. So I've heard kind of his story of how he became a filmmaker. And part of it involved this movie that he made called, My Best Friend's Wedding, I think. Yeah, I believe the title of the film was My Best Friend's Wedding.
Isn't that another movie?
No.
Julia Roberts movie.
Definitely not My Best Friend's Wedding. I'm going to fact check this real quick.
I'm bringing up the Google machine.
But while I do that, I do know the facts about this movie other than its title. He spent 3 years making it. He would make it whenever he had an extra weekend. He would get the cast together and make it. But because he didn't have enough money to
it's my best friend's birthday.
My best friend's birthday.
Okay, I'll give you that was close.
It was close. It was
for a
close.
movie you've never seen.
Yeah, for a movie that
good.
I don't think anyone's ever seen. Like I think it came out. I think actually there's a portion of it on one of the DVDs. But he worked on it for 3 years in his spare time, essentially. And he wasn't able to develop any of the footage until he was done with all of it. So he had no idea whether any of the stuff that he was filming was any good. So he got to the end point, finished movie, developed all of it, and it was useless. It was just terrible. Like it was nothing like what he expected it to look like. But the thing that he said is that it kind of counted as his film school. Like there's the kind of popular story that like, oh, this guy just hung out at a video store and watched movies all day, and that's how he learned about movies. But it kind of seems like he learned about movies by making a movie, you know. And he found that the stuff that he filmed early on, all the action stuff, was all the story stuff was useless. But all the stuff that he filmed later on, which was the action stuff, was actually pretty good apparently. So he kind of thought like, okay, I've improved. Now I can jump in and do Reservoir Dogs. But anyway, that's the story of the lost Tarantino movie.
In fairness to Curt, like, have you ever heard Tarantino talk?
I just told you. I've so many Charlie hours.
I just like, I can't get through like 5 minutes of him talking before I'm just like, I love your work, but I just can't with your, as we've discussed, pretentious is not the right word, but I haven't found the correct word to accurately describe Tarantino's tone when he's talking to anybody else.
Yeah. There are a couple different Tarantinos. Because you can watch his Charlie Rose interviews, and there he's in like film critic mode.
Yeah.
And he's saying a lot of really great stuff. He's a super, super smart guy, very funny, eloquent. But then when he's on like his late night shows, he makes like a lot of misogynist jokes, like a lot of them, and seems to kind of hate women. But in like a I'm doing this because it's funny way, without realizing like, no, that's not funny. It's not funny to be talking to a pair of people who've just walked out of Kill Bill Volume 2 and to ask them if they're on a date, and when the woman says no, to ask if the man bought the ticket, and when the man says yes, to say yes, that's a date. Yes, you have the right to get lucky tonight. I have 2 words for you, alcohol.
Wow.
Yeah, that's don't this is more direct advice to the listener and to my dear friends in the room. Do not go watch Quentin Tarantino interviews on late night shows.
I have a feeling, I haven't watched a lot of interviews or anything with him talking, but I feel like he spends a lot of time by himself. And I think that like he maybe never had people to like bounce. You say things when you're younger, and people are like, "You shouldn't say that." Like he never had anyone to like filter that. So now we just get the unadulterated lone man thoughts.
And to be fair to Quentin Tarantino, all these interviews were from like 10 plus years ago. He may have cleaned up his act more recently. I'm not familiar with the more recent late night interviews, but the stuff that he was saying in the mid 2000s on the Kill Bill press tour, pretty fucking hateful.
So we have our superlatives, and we're going to do our ranking, right?
Talk about our ranking.
And then I think the only like big discussion we have for this one is getting into one of the movies that we kind of disagree.
We're going to return to that ground, that hallowed ground.
And
then after the ranking, we're going to, at least I would like to, if we have time, talk about some of the impact, some of the fallout of Quentin Tarantino's like indie success in the early and mid 90s.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. You give me permission.
We're gonna do that.
All right. So, without further ado, let's get into some superlatives.
Yes.
Want to just go like one at a time, round table?
Sure. Yeah, round table. How do we want? Which one do you want to start with? I didn't think about this much.
I have an order here. Let's start with the silliest one. Best death.
Best death.
Yeah.
What do you think, Leah?
Best death is different than funniest death. Right?
Yeah.
Yes,
okay,
I don't have one for funniest death,
but
I can come up with one.
So me and Ben briefly discussed this, but I think the puking death in Hateful Eight, like I simultaneously find it hilarious and like also like something happens in my gut where I'm like, this hurts me. It looks because it looks real and fake at the same time, and like it makes me want to throw up, but also makes me want to laugh, and it's great, and then it just continues longer than you expect it to, and then it continues so long that it like becomes funny again.
The blood like comes out in a perfect cone.
Yeah. There's the splatter all over everything.
I was like, it looks, like you said, it looks way too real, but also way too fake. And it's like, I don't know what actual puking blood would look like, but I'm pretty sure it's not like this.
I think it was, I think Cave mentioned it in the last episode, that it looks like the Ipecac thing from Family Guy, where Peter drinks it and he's puking all over the living room. Like, it reminds me of that too.
Yeah.
Like,
or I brought up the Team America vomiting in the bar scene as well. It reminds me a lot of that.
So many films explore this. Like,
I also love that because John Ruth is the Hangman's name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fucking, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm
pretty sure.
John Ruth and OB. I might have mentioned this in the last episode, but I love how they essentially function as one character. They're introduced at basically the same time, and they die at the same time. Like, OB never has an independent character, except as an extension of John Ruth. Fascinating. Anyway, Curtis, what's your best death?
I didn't really think about... I have a funniest death, but I didn't really think about best one, so I might need a minute. So what's yours?
My best death, because I gotta think about funniest death. My best death is Bill in Kill Bill.
Yeah.
I think that's the most impactful. I think that's Tarantino exploring like the nature of death in cinema, because through the rest of those movies you have just gory death after gory death, right? And then she uses the special 5-point palm exploding heart technique, and it's a completely bloodless death. It's a stage death. It's not like a complicated stage death either. It's like a death that is all based on acting. And if we're going to accept like the Tarantino theory that Tarantino is an actor's director, which I'm happy to accept that theory, I think it's one of his greatest strengths, then giving an actor a moment like that, where it's like, no effects, no nothing. You're just going to stand up, you're going to take 5 steps away from the camera, and you're going to fall down. And it's like the whole 4-hour experience that you've had leading up to that moment, all the other deaths that you've seen on screen. Yet that one, somehow, because it's the culmination of all those deaths, it encompasses all those deaths, transcends all those deaths. That is my favorite filmed death in a Quentin Tarantino movie.
See, now I just feel inclined to agree with that. I'm like, you sold me. I really like that, because I think we kind of talked about, when we talked about Kill Bill, that it doesn't end the way you expect it to. You think it's going to be this like big,
a beach battle at sunrise, because he has a flair for the dramatic.
And so it doesn't end like you expect it to, and it also doesn't end like every other death in the Kill Bill movies, but it's still very satisfying. And it's not even like, for me, it wasn't even like satisfying on like a second viewing. Like, even though you expected something different, it still is like, you still feel really good about how he dies.
It's an interesting, it's also because of the like love story aspect between Bill and the bride that we had talked about a little bit, which is like this perverse love story that maybe I've kind of come back a little bit on my idea that they were never really in love. I think that there probably was a time when they had like a good relationship, but that it devolved into the kind of abusive cycles pretty quickly. But Bill dies of a broken heart.
Oh yeah,
See,
I don't pick up on stuff. I'm not that smart. Like,
Bill died. Beatrix Kiddo breaks Bill's heart
twice.
Right? Once he kills her because he broke her heart, or once he kills her because she broke his heart, and then she kills him by breaking his heart.
This is the best movie ever. No.
Kill Bill's really good. Not as good as Inglourious Basterds, but pretty good.
We'll get into it.
Well, let's push that back a little bit.
I think, so what about funniest? Because you kind of had, is that your...
Yeah, I'll let you have it.
Okay.
Describe the funniest death.
I realized when I was thinking about that, there are a lot of funny deaths.
He uses death probably more to be funny than anything else.
So I think the 3 that it really kind of came down to were, I guess like one's maybe not as funny, but I really like, of course now I can't remember her name, but when Robert De Niro shoots her in the parking lot in Pulp Fiction.
What's her name? It's not Melanie.
Is it?
Is
No.
it Melanie?
I think it's Melanie.
Okay.
But when she's just annoying him,
Yeah.
so he just shoots her and leaves her in a parking lot.
So blunt.
It's
so
just
sudden.
really so sudden.
And this
I
is
think,
in Jackie Brown. Did you mention
Yeah,
that?
Jackie Brown. So it's just, I just thought that was really funny to just walk away from it. Like, I think you think that she's going to have to play a part in the rest of the film, and he just, kills her. But also, Calvin Candy's sister in Django, simply because Django kind of, shoots her from, she's at the bottom of the stairs, and he's at the top, and he shoots her, and she blows, 40 feet sideways. I think it's just a pistol, too.
The angle that she flies back is at, it's like a 45 degrees off from where you expect her to fly.
And the thing is, it makes you remember that you're watching a movie again. Like, you're involved in the action, and you're like, oh no, Django's gonna get shot, and then that happens, and you're like, oh right, I am watching a film.
Yeah.
This is a movie.
It really, also to, add to it, it really fucking yanks her. It's just way faster and in, the opposite direction that you expect it to be.
Yeah. No part of it looks like what should happen when you get shot.
And I laughed when I saw that in the theater. I was watching it by myself because I didn't have any friends, and I laughed out loud, with myself when I saw that. And for me, Marvin in Pulp Fiction, because the whole that whole vignette of the anthology is a result of John Travolta accidentally shooting Marvin in the face from the
Well,
front
he's
of the
asking
car.
him his opinion about something. What do you think, Marvin? Well, you gotta have an opinion. And just casually leaning his gun on the seat.
But
you need a bump or something.
Yeah. I can't remember exactly what he says. Oh shit, I shot Marvin in the face.
Oh man, I shot Marvin in the face. I don't remember exactly what he says, but it's with a sense of oh dang it.
Yeah. The biggest issue is that now this is a problem that we have to solve, not poor Marvin, our inside guy who helped us.
Right.
Do you have one?
Let me think about funniest death. Well, I just recently rewatched Inglourious Bastards yesterday, so the death of the Nazi who gets beaten to death by Donnie with the baseball bat, I find pretty funny.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's gruesome, but the setup for it is really funny because you get snippets of what the Nazi kind of seems to see himself as doing.
Yeah.
He sees himself as being very brave. Donnie does not see him as being brave. Donnie sees him as being a Nazi. And even if you are brave, if your acts of bravery are in service of you being a Nazi, then that bravery is not good bravery. Right, so the whole scene kind of plays off that, and then Donnie just yelling, "Teddy fucking Williams!"
Yeah,
knocks it out of the park.
I think for that,
who's next?
Yeah, I don't think we really got a chance to talk about that when we
batter up. You're on deck.
Ben just has the script.
He's so good. He's so good.
I think what I like about that is when he says he has that medal for bravery. It feels like he's taking some of the satisfaction from Donnie, but it totally doesn't. He still very much enjoys himself.
He wants Donnie says, "Did you get this medal?" He's holding it up with his bat, and he's like, "Did you get this one for killing Jews?" Yep. He's like, "I got it for bravery." And Donnie's face doesn't change; he just gets angrier.
What else we got?
Funniest death? Oh, or for other superlatives?
Was that your funniest death?
Yeah, that was my funniest death, I'm going to say. Other superlatives. Best style for a character. Which character had the best style? This is a reference to old fucking giant bombcasts where they said that way.
Just
so people know.
Every time you say style, it's a little more drawn out.
Best style.
I don't know.
Django.
Yeah, okay.
I think Django is Django's a good choice.
Pretty unanimously.
I think from the beginning of the film, it shows that he has style even when he doesn't have the ability to buy clothes. When he whips off that
burlap
blanket.
sack, yeah.
Total hero shot. Amazing. Yeah. And then, of course, who can forget the blue outfit?
Yeah.
That he rides into Don Johnson's plantation with.
And I don't remember
LA. And then when he falls into his final superhero costume.
And we talked about that, but I don't remember if it was on a podcast or if we were just talking.
We were just talking.
When he has the full Western cowboy bounty hunter outfit. You're just that looks fucking cool.
Cool as shit.
I'm scared of him right now.
And Schultz has really good style as well. That coat that he wears.
The grays. I'm a fan of a man in gray.
Yeah.
Yeah, Schultz. It's looking good.
Which side was that again in the Civil War, Leah?
I think, we discussed how much I wanted Leonardo DiCaprio to just take me in that movie. So, clearly, I got my own issues.
I'm working through some stuff, but it's okay.
It's fine. I'm talking about it on the podcast.
Public forum.
What about you, Curtis? Who's your best style?
I mean, I really think that's it. I think, as far as, like, charisma, I really like John Travolta in Pulp Fiction.
John Travolta's the other one. His hair, charisma also, but
so
hair
if you,
I'm like concerned that you guys think that that's stylish.
No, I don't think it looks good.
No,
but it's very him. You know,
like
he clearly has an idea,
that
like the earring and everything. Fucking on point.
If
he's a cheap imitation of Ving Rhames' character in that movie, though. Like
a cheap imitation of Marcellus Wallace.
Yeah, like with the earring, and he's like a.
No, that's an interesting thought. I'd never thought of that before, but yeah. Huh.
I'm gonna have to watch all these movies again after this.
so many layers. That's interesting.
But yeah, I think if you were to account for clothing and everything, actually thinking about Jules and Vincent, I think the fact that even though they're just wearing like black suits, I think maybe the reason they look so ridiculous wearing the basketball shorts and plain t-shirts is because it's so against the style they have going earlier.
I think
but still not as cool as Django.
I think Tarantino in Pulp Fiction was playing against his expectations from Reservoir Dogs, where Reservoir Dogs had set off like a whole bunch of movies. We'll talk about this later, I'm sure. But set off a whole bunch of movies that's like, it's cool guys in dark suits talking about crimes, right? And Tarantino's like, all right, I'm going to start with the diner, but then we're going to go into these two cool guys in suits talking about crimes, right? Talking about the crimes they're going to do. And then some shit goes down in the apartment. And then next time you see them, they're wearing the outfits of dorks. They're wearing... He's wearing a fucking UC Berkeley Banana Slugs shirt. Or Santa Cruz. Sorry, UC Santa Cruz Banana Slugs
When I was
t-shirt.
rewatching that, because I haven't seen these movies in so long, I had that same moment again that I had with Inglourious Bastards, where I was like, why are they speaking English right now? But I had that same moment in that bar scene where I was like, why are they in t-shirts right now?
Yeah, they have the briefcase, so it's clearly not that far in the future, but something has happened to make them be in these clothes. And then later on, of course, you find out what happened.
I think that what a good movie.
Such a good
At
movie.
the end of the day.
Pulp Fiction, some would say one of Tarantino's best. For me, best style. Are you set?
Yeah, I'm pretty on
best
with
style.
yeah.
For me, best style is Shoshana from Inglourious
Okay.
I was
Basterds.
going to say that when she pulled... Sorry, I'm like
Yeah.
hijacking you right now.
Yeah.
But
No,
with
because you're talking about the same thing I was going to talk about.
the widow's
The veil. Yeah,
and
she's
the red
wearing.
dress.
So I love Shoshana in that movie because she has such a distinct like Parisian hipster in the 1940s aesthetic, like her baggy pants,
The
but
trousers.
she fucking makes it work. Like she looks good in it. She doesn't look like she's putting on an act. She looks like she feels natural in these clothes because like these are her people. This is her culture. She has gotten so embedded into the like cinephile culture of Paris that she dresses like them. She acts like them. Not that she's lying. Like she's not lying, but it just communicates who she is really quickly.
Yeah.
And as a character who is not able to communicate who she is through her words very much, Melanie Laurent, through the way that she wears those clothes and the way just that her face looks in various scenes, communicates an enormous amount about Shoshana. Then the scene where she dresses up like the femme fatale when she knows that she's going to burn it down, and she like puts on the red lipstick, does everything, the like beautiful red dress, and then the final touch is putting on her veil because the Nazis don't know it, but this is their funeral.
I mean, aesthetically that's great, but also we can't discount the soundtrack when that's happening.
Yeah.
Too, with the 80s.
Putting out fire with gasoline.
I think that the thing that I remember the most about her is that she has those different styles that work so well, and that she looks great in the final in the red dress, and then I remember thinking like just how cool she looks when she's in the cafe with cigarettes and the coffee, and she works no matter what she's wearing in that, and I think that is also something to be.
Yeah, I think that the reason she works so well in the red dress as well is because she is imitating the characters from the movies that she loves to watch. You know, she's imitating the, like, high class, the type of woman that the Nazis are expecting her to be during this event. But in addition, she has the veil because she's gonna fucking kill them all. Oh, it's a great movie. All right, next one, best character.
I gotta go with Beatrix in that. I think overall,
me too. Actually,
I felt connected to her the most. Maybe it's because you have this like 4.5 hour window of
it's an epic.
Getting
it's the
to
longest
know her.
Time you spend with a character in a Tarantino movie.
It's also probably. I'm going to say this, and then I might not be accurate, but I think it's the only Tarantino movie. I just realized how long I had my hands held like that. I think it's probably... Most of his movies are like you getting to know groups of people, and I think Kill Bill is... I mean, you have the divas, but it's really... She's the main character. And I think you really get to know her, and she acts really well in that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like, the story of the bride is amazing. Uma Thurman's performance as the bride is some real next level shit. She communicates so much. And not just Uma Thurman's performance. We should also call out Zoe Bell's performance. The Zoe Bell being the stunt woman who played Beatrix Kiddo, the bride, in Kill Bill. The two of them work together really well to create a coherent character who... It doesn't feel like you're seeing multiple people play this character. It feels like there is one way in which this character moves. It's different from the way any other character moves in this movie. In a movie that is like almost like a musical in its fight scenes. You spend so long... in fact, maybe more of the character comes across through the fighting than anything else. Like the way that she fights, the way the reasons why she's fighting comes through while she's fighting. Just a truly incredible creation.
That the other half of that for me is exactly that, where if there were any reason to get revenge on somebody, I think the bride, that's one of the best motives for revenge in any of these movies. It probably tied with Shosanna.
Yeah,
but.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I prefer Shoshana because I can just, like, empathize with her more.
Yeah.
I agree with the physicality of Kill Bill, but I don't know. Like, I'm more invested in Shoshana because, like, I can't identify with being in a gang, like having my lover murder me.
Yeah,
but I mean,
not that you have to empathize with somebody to like think that they're the best character, but throughout even 2 movies, I'm like, do I really know this person? Like, I get her motivation for wanting to kill these people, but I don't know. I just... So,
for me, because, yeah, it's like, her motivations are kind of out there. But, at the same time, I think we all have, like, regrets about people that we've become involved with. And things that have shaken out in ways that we did not expect them to shake out. And I think that the bride has a lot of that regret.
Yeah.
And trying to get out of a situation that you've gotten yourself into... Yeah, and she's totally right to want to get out. And that's one of the things that I love about the bride, is she's totally righteous. But, talk about Shoshana. Because I agree, Shoshana is also an incredible character. If that is indeed who you were going to say for your best character.
Yeah, I mean, even from the beginning, I think not just, like, her as a character, but the way that they set it up in the beginning, where it's, like, this idyllic, like, French countryside, and she's, like, almost like a Disney princess, because she's, like, a milkmaid who has a tragic thing happen to her family, runs away, and then she, like, develops as a character, and, like, she has these interests in film, and we've already talked about the style, and she's gorgeous. And the way that she shuts down that Ewan McGregor lookalike.
Private Zoller.
Like
Megan was talking about that moment when she puts her book down. She sees him out the window and she sees that he's coming in and she just like resignedly puts her book down. Megan was saying like, yes, I know that feeling.
And like she's young, but she's also going in World War II, and she just does not have time to deal with that. Like, does not have time to pretend like she likes this young Nazi talking to her.
I got really into thinking about her backstory while I was watching the movie yesterday, because you really don't get a comprehensive view of her backstory. Like the years between when she's under those floorboards and when she's putting up that marquee are pretty much blank years, with the exception of the fact that they refer to Mademoiselle, I don't know. They refer to Mimiu's film collection, which is what they're going to burn. And I wasn't sure in that moment if they were referring to Mimiu as, like, that's just Shoshana's fake name, or if, and this whole movie played out in my head when that line got said, but what I see happening is Shoshana befriends the owner of a movie house, becomes like her confidant. They share this love of cinema, and then when Mimiu dies, she leaves Shoshana this movie house. And, like, to have a story that beautiful tucked away in, like, a throwaway line that you just have to, like, oh, so how did she? You know, I'm curious. How did she get the movie house? Well, they say this, so that means this. So that means this might have happened? Like, that's an incredible little, just subtle piece of characterization in Inglourious Basterds.
I think one thing that kind of are similar with Beatrix and Shoshana is that they both kind of, as far as, like, their life story goes, they kind of have, like, the Jesus thing, where it's like the beginning is super important, and then we skip over a lot of it, and then, you know, and then you get the end of it, and you kind of have, like, you get a few flashbacks to give you some insight, but one of the things that I find more relatable with Shoshana than Beatrix is that in Kill Bill, it's like a race to Bill. Like, I want to find this person and kill him and kill anybody in the way. And I think it's easier to relate to Shoshana, where this tragic thing happened, and you just want to be left alone. You don't want to be in the same room. You don't want to be in the same country. You just want to take what you have left and have it in peace. And I think that it's, in that regard, it's easier to relate to her. Because I think if something tragic happened to me, I probably wouldn't want to go on a killing spree. I think I'd want to just, like...
Well, and it's a fuller character, I think, because I've never met anybody who's lived their life for vengeance.
Yeah.
So I don't really know anybody who, like, spent some time in a monastery learning how to fight, so...
Yeah. Shoshana and the Bride. I think that's a good... I think I can safely tie them in my mind.
Yeah.
Can we link to the fanfiction I'm going to write? Shoshana and the Bride.
Yeah, the meetup. Yeah, you can put that in the plugs at the end.
Okay.
Do you have any more superlatives? I have a few. We didn't come up with the same superlatives.
We didn't.
So do you have more?
So my last one is best scene.
Okay.
For me, the best scene, and this is in any Tarantino movie.
Oh, man.
It was a hard thing to think about. But for me, the best scene is the tavern scene in Inglourious Basterds, in the chapter 4, the Operation Kino chapter. The way that tavern scene unfolds is just impeccable. The, like, constant back and forth, the way it introduces another character, like, 3/4 of the way through. It's like, oh, that phonograph that's been in the background, turns out that's in an alcove, and there's this other guy, like an SS officer who's been over here listening the whole time. Tarantino has a real flair for the theatrical when it comes to, like, introducing characters to the stage and taking them off the stage.
And the boot mug. The boot mug?
I didn't notice this.
He's drinking from a stein that's shaped like a boot. I think I have a special note about, like, so German.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's my favorite scene.
Do you have a particular favorite scene?
Well, I was actually thinking about this, and there's just so much to talk about, but the scene with Gogo, that's her name, right?
Gogo Ibari. That fight scene.
Yeah. And, like, her backstory of, like, no, she's just crazy.
Yeah.
Not like sexy crazy.
No.
Like crazy.
God, that's tough. I mean, I guess it's hard to define, like, what makes something the best, because there's, like, really, I think you have scenes that have, like, great payoff. You mentioned in an earlier episode, Tarantino's really good about giving you the payoff.
He knows what based on what he has shown you, he knows what you want next.
Yeah.
And he won't give it to you for a long time, but then he has a tendency to give you the thing that you wanted most.
I think so in that regard, I think the pawn shop scene in Pulp Fiction is one of the most gratifying, like, to have it end the way it does. It feels pretty good when you're watching it. And what else? I don't know. I hadn't... Weirdly enough, I hadn't really thought about that. And there's just a lot. I'm trying to look at my Tarantino movies. But...
I think that the two distinctive qualities that people usually say about Tarantino films is the dialogue and then the violence. So for me, it was hard to, like, pick one that had both of those things in it at the same time. I mean, there are lots of scenes that have both of those things, but I wanted to pick, like, the best dialogue and the best violence, and those two didn't really coincide.
What do you think is the best dialogue? So you think the go-go fight is the best violence?
I wouldn't say it's the best violence, but
she has a really good death
mentioned
also.
It yet.
we hadn't talked about her death.
Wanted to talk about her.
But, yeah, her death belongs in that best death category. The, like, her own weapon, like, bashes into the side of her head, and then she cries blood for a second. Yep. Very Japanese cinema.
And also the spike through the foot, I think,
was
pretty.
I hate that.
Does she get her own? Is it her own weapon that kills her, or does Beatrix
Go-go?
stick her with the piece of wood with the nail in it?
Oh, it's the piece of wood with the nail in it. You're right. My bad. Beatrix doesn't use the flail.
I think she does get hit with it. I don't remember.
Beatrix gets hit with the flail.
I'll just have to watch Kill Bill again.
I guess I'll just have to watch Kill Bill again too. I've resigned myself.
Yeah, that's tough. There's a lot of good scenes in these 8 movies that are all 3 hours long.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to look at mine. So what about best antagonist? Have you guys? Londa. I'm so poor at making choices. I have 3.
Yeah.
And he's one of them because he is great because of just despicableness, like just awful person that literally, like, the scenes he's in, I get like sick to my stomach when he's like drinking the milk and when he's eating the little cream porn thing.
Which is funny because I don't think he's even doing that to be intimidating.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's just him
You
trying
don't think he knew?
I don't think he knew that was Shoshana. At that
milk?
moment.
Oh, the milk.
The milk. You don't think he knew with the milk?
Here's what I think. I think for some reason he was just thinking about that dairy farm at that moment.
This guy just loves dairy. That's
because he never moves on Shoshana. He never moves on
But
Shoshana.
He seems like such a chess player. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, he's playing 3-dimensional chess. That's for sure. But yeah.
What makes him the most despicable, I think, is because you can think that he really believes in the Nazi party until the end, and then you're like, no, he's the worst human in the world.
Like, he hates Jews, but casually. Like, he's a casual racist against Jews. He just plays a virulent anti-Semite for his job as the Jew hunter. Yes, he represents so much of what, like, the legacy of the Nazis have left behind. He represents, like, Werner von Braun, right? Like, the Nazi scientists that got jobs with America and with the West after leaving the war behind, who just got to continue living and making money because they were very important people in the Nazi party, and nothing bad ever happens to important people. Pisses me off really bad. The legacy of the Nazis is some fucked up shit. I've got some notes about it, about the whole, like, you need all 4 to kill the war type stuff. There's a lot. Yeah. We'll talk about Inglourious Basterds later. But yeah,
and I think not as bad as Hans, but very despicable too, I find, is Steven in Django Unchained. Just a very you feel good when he gets capped in the knee or whatever. Like,
yeah.
So I watched Django for the first time with Ben, and like the majority of when Samuel L. Jackson gets on the screen was just me screaming that I wanted him to die.
Yeah.
Shut up. I'm like, when does he die?
Tarantino knows that you want him to die. He gives him that great line at the end, the like, Django, you uppity son of a... You can't destroy Candyland!
He is so disgusting in that movie, and it's a very more complicated kind of figure, I think, than it comes off as at first.
His one speech, like his one big speech where he's not in a room full of white people, I think, is him talking to Django after Django's been strung up. And that speech gives me the fucking willies, right? Because you see the exact mechanisms by which Steven has integrated himself into this white slavery system, right?
And also it seems pointless with Hans. Like, he gets something out of what he's doing. Like, Steven, he gets a glass of brandy and to
Yeah.
sit down.
Steven gets to be in control of the estate that he has lived on for his whole life.
I get it's about the dynamics and power, but it's not worth it.
And then the other one that I really like a lot, and it's kind of because it's the opposite of that character type, is Stuntman Mike. Mm. Just because, in a way, like when you first meet him, he's a very interesting and likable. And even though you know something bad is going to happen with this guy, he just seems kind of cool. He has good lines and fun dialogue, and
then by the end,
yeah,
he's a screaming baby.
Yeah.
I like that. I was thinking about Death Proof the other day because.
Sorry, I just made a realization that he's like just a total fuckboy who like memorized one Robert Frost poem to pick up chicks and like
exactly. But the perspective of the film, like the first half, the like more grindhousey half of Death Proof, is like one of those grindhouse movies that's kind of on the bad guy's side.
Yeah,
like you're meant to sympathize more with Stuntman Mike than you are with any of those women that he kills in the first half. And then in the second half, it flips that around. You're no longer meant to sympathize with Stuntman Mike at all.
This has nothing to do with Stuntman Mike other than his death, but that leg lift at the end is like my favorite.
She like crushes his face.
I also think too with Stuntman Mike, the scene when he licks her feet, he just like he just looks super cool to me. He just has like this super like greaser.
That's what Tarantino wants.
Yeah,
he wants more foot fetishes.
There's the most foot stuff in Death Proof. Like Death Proof is saturated with foot stuff.
But he just has like the blue jeans and the tight black t-shirt and the cool hair and like sunglasses and just a very cool biker greaser he just looks cool as a bad guy and he's still a very bad person, but you're just like, man, that guy's fucking cool. Yeah. But that's it for me. Those three are my one favorite.
What about you, Leah? Do you have anything to add to the villains? Who's your favorite?
I think we covered it. Though I'm trying to find a way to talk about that head cut off scene in Kill Bill. It's not the best.
Which
She's
one?
not the best villain.
Oranishi?
Yeah.
Yeah, when she cuts the top off her head.
But it's just beautiful.
It's beautiful. It is beautiful. That is the only. We've already talked about this.
Yeah.
That's the only fight with mutual respect in that movie.
I also
the whole
like
length of it.
Kill Bill because when you say decapitation, you're like, which decapitation? And because I at first thought you were talking about when
Oren cuts the Japanese
guy's head off.
That's
a good movie right there. That's how you know.
And speaking of like best villains, Bill.
Yeah,
like Bill, I think belongs in that same category.
No, I just.
He represents so much about like toxic masculinity and misogyny and rape culture to me.
Yeah.
Bill is a great encapsulation of a lot of that kind of shit. And seeing him get killed because he is such a shitheel makes me really happy.
Yeah. I like too that I mean the twist is nice. I mean you kind of know that her daughter is still alive, but I didn't really expect it to play out like it did, and I like that he prolongs his own death with that. Like, you expect her to, like, kick the door in and then, murderous fight to ensue. But he's just really good at staying alive for a long time. And you just want him to die, and it takes, this 5 hours of movie and years of Beatrix's life to...
I can't imagine what that girl's life is like, though.
Oh my god.
The person who murdered the only parent that you know now comes and takes you and says that she's your mother. Like,
yeah. And Bill had told BB that this was her mother. So she knows to trust Beatrix. But at the same time, you're right. You do have to think about, like, what's the fallout from that going to be like? This little girl's life has been so chaotic.
And she's going to be on the run. It's not like you can see a therapist.
Right. You can't see a new therapist in every town that you flee to.
Well, I do like, though, that I noticed when I was watching it for, like, the 1000th time, when her favorite movie is Shogun Assassin, which is a pretty fucking weird movie for a 5-year-old girl to like.
Yeah.
But then after she is taken with Beatrix, they're just like hanging out in that hotel room, and she's like watching some like regular kid cartoon. And I like to think that that's like, she'll be okay.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And like even watching Shogun Assassin probably isn't that bad, you know?
At that age, you just like what your parents like.
Exactly. At that
You
age,
don't
it's
even
like, oh, you
understand
said
why.
that's cool. I keep coming back to this, but like watching Pulp Fiction when I was like 6 years old with my mom, she was like, "You gotta watch this diner scene. It's hilarious." And I was like, I can't understand British accents yet. This is really, I don't understand a word Tim Roth is saying.
not to mention too though, like, BB, I couldn't remember her name for a second.
BB Bang Bang for like the song at the beginning.
Oh,
yeah, it's a fucking great
layers,
movie.
man. No, Shogun Assassin is about a very sad and remorseful widower that travels with their single kid, kind of living a life of moving around and missing the mother.
So that's kind of a projection of what the life,
yeah,
of what their life would look like together.
Is why BB like. Well, I was thinking with Bill. That's BB is kind of the little boy from Shogun Assassin, because Bill lives a life very much like, even though it's his, he misses Beatrix and they move around and stuff, but layers, man.
Really good, really good. I think that's about it for villains. We could give a shout out to Leo in Calvin Z. Candy. I love him. I love him until the very end of the part.
Does his eyeliner get darker and darker as the movie goes on?
As he gets eviler and eviler?
Yeah, his beard gets pointier.
Yeah.
Oh, the pipe. Sorry, I'm going back.
In Inglourious Basterds?
Yes. So I wanted to go back, like, that huge cartoonish pipe he pulls out.
Yeah.
I just jumped movies. We're going back to Hans for a
I'm
second.
happy to talk about Inglourious Basterds some more.
Like, when he pulls out that pipe, am I supposed to think, like, oh, this is a villain? Or am I supposed to think, oh, this is a fairy tale? Because I don't know which is happening.
I think it's both of those plus something else. Because, like, if you're tracking the power dynamic in that scene, it's like, oh, Londa asks for the glass of milk, and then he drinks the whole glass of milk. Then he tells the daughters to go outside. And then, but the French guy has his own thing. He's going to light his pipe, which is like a slight imposition. It's like, I'm going to ask you permission to do this, and you're going to give me permission to do it because it's my home. Just reminding you that this is my home. And then when the dynamic shifts back rapidly to Londa, as it becomes clear that Londa knows more than he's letting on, it's like the way he says that line, "Do you mind if I light my pipe as well?" Like, he says it with more intensity than he needs to, because he knows he's about to, like, big dick this dude.
You think your little wooden pipe is cool.
Yeah, look at this fucking
I
thing.
couldn't help but to think of, this is not a pipe. I'm like,
Ceci n'est pas une pipe.
I think the only other one I have that we haven't really talked about is the best screen pairing duo throughout any of these movies. Do you guys have a particular favorite team up?
The one that comes to mind first for me is Django and Schultz from Django Unchained. The way that relationship plays out over time. The way at first Schultz is the one saying, like, "Now Django, remember, you're playing a character. Don't break character." And then when they actually are seeing the horrors of slavery, like, up close and personal, Schultz is the one who has trouble holding it together. Yep. So I think that there's a fine and storied tradition of white people making movies about white people educating black people. And I think that by that very subtle shift in the dynamic, Tarantino is completely able to sidestep that and make that, like, not even really an issue in that movie. Because they have a realistic dynamic. They have a dynamic that feels complete. It doesn't feel like some writer with, like, white guilt is saying, like, I want to lift up black people by teaching them about European culture. It's more like they have a mutual respect. They have they need each other. They have weaknesses in different areas, strengths in different areas. That's the one that comes to mind for me.
Though, about the not westernizing black people commentary, I still have an issue with the Bonehilda situation, but
Broomhilda.
Broomhilda.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hildy.
I also have an issue with Hildy. I think it's the same as your issue. But what issue are we talking about here?
That before we even meet her or know what she looks like, we know that she can speak German, and she just seems other. Like, there's this pointed thing. She's like, she's not like other slaves, which I think is like trying to. You see that it's trying to show why Django is so in love with this particular person, his wife, but it also is saying, like, she's better than other people, and this is why Schultz should empathize with her, and it's because she has all these Western characteristics, these non-slave characteristics. And I don't know, I'm just not into that, but that
is a little bit troubling.
Yeah.
I had not thought of that. That is very fair.
But at the same time, that has to do with this idea that he's talking about a lot in Django Unchained about how, like, the Southern gentry liked to they took what they wanted from European aristocracy and kind of discarded the stuff that they didn't like. That's why there's that shot of, like, the little girl practicing violin, or the bit at the end when Schultz walks over to the woman playing the harp and is like, "Could you please stop playing Beethoven?" Because he sees his European culture being bastardized by people who are appropriating it to look good without actually being good or embodying any of the virtues that Schultz sees in kind of classical European culture of the Renaissance forward. And as troubling and as much of an interaction with that history of, like, black people are only worthwhile if they adopt white characteristics, thing that Broomhilda definitely represents, I think she also represents another facet to reflect on what slave owners were doing in the South.
Yeah, I suspect that there are layers there and that I'm not quite understanding them because I've only seen Django once, and rewatching, like, Inglourious Bastards and Pulp Fiction, there are a lot of things that I missed the first time, and there are a lot of things I need Tarantino to explicitly explain to me. Yeah. Usually, like, in a heading that comes on in the bottom, like, okay. So maybe that's just my first interpretation. I need to go back and watch it.
I think that there's probably more evidence for me to look at as well from Django, but my heart tells me that Broomhilda is just a weakness in that movie overall. Like, that movie suffers from a real lack of women, and Broomhilda, being the most prominent woman that you're supposed to sympathize with, is not a very strong character. Like, Kerry Washington, God bless her, does the best she can with what she's got, but that movie is not about women.
Yeah.
And there was room for more. That's kind of the reason Django doesn't make it very high on my list. But anyway,
I'll forgive Tarantino for Kill Bill and Death Proof. He's proved himself in other ways.
Well, yeah, like that was the thing I was thinking about. Like, if you think about the 4 movies he made before Django, it was like, all right, Kill Bill, feminist masterpiece, or rather, Jackie Brown, feminist masterpiece. Kill Bill, feminist masterpiece. Death Proof, feminist masterpiece. Inglourious, half feminist masterpiece. And then Django Unchained is a story about 2 men who are friends with each other. It's like, all right, okay, you know what? You bought this one. Yeah. Like, you did the footwork. Like, at this point, you're kind of half and half as far as movies that have, like, really strong feminist points to make and movies that are more about men.
I think I was going back and forth. I think I finally, like, landed on Django, but I really like the coolness of Jules and Vincent in Pulp Fiction, but I think as the characters develop, I think it leaves me liking Django and Schultz as the best kind of, like, pair, because I think when Django starts out, you do kind of have this, like, yeah, sorry, but I had to buy you. You know, you can help me. You kind of have to help me. You don't have to keep helping me, but I do own you, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'd like to enter into an agreement with you.
Yeah, you know, and teaching him to read, and when he first tells him the story of Broomhilda, it's still funny because, you know, Django says, you know, tell me a story, and then he sits like a kid.
I love it. I love that.
And I love it, but it
gives you such a good idea of Django's personality.
And it shows, and, you know, there's a word that Django doesn't know. Is it certain scene. Or what word?
Which one is it? Woo! Oh shit!
No, whatever.
When he's like going to go shoot that guy,
yeah,
and he's like, "Is that him?
Are you positive? Yeah, is it positive?
Oh,
I don't remember.
Yeah, he says it's oh god. Okay, I'm just gonna rattle off this dialogue. He says, "Is that him? Yes. Are you sure? Yes. Are you positive? I don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know if you're positive? I don't know what positive means. It means sure. Then yes." Yeah. He shoots him. I'm positive he's dead.
So when they start out, you kind of have that, like, father-son and, you know, white man slave dynamic, but really, like you were saying, by the end, they've kind of fully come to this partnership, and they're equals.
And Schultz has come to be a rabid, virulent, like violent abolitionist, whereas before he was kind of a casual abolitionist.
And with Jules and Vincent, the way Pulp Fiction is cut, at the end of it, they do walk out of the diner together, but it's shown not in chronological order, so they don't even remain a team.
We know that very soon Vincent Vega gets killed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jules is a bum.
Jules.
I'm gonna have to disagree just because Jules and Vincent are so iconic, and I don't think a lot of people, not a lot of people, but not the amount of people have seen Django as they have Pulp Fiction.
I wonder if that's true, actually.
And I highly doubt there are as many college students.
I was just going to say that.
Django.
Fucking Django posters.
the classic college dorm Pulp Fiction
oh god,
poster. I think the imagery of Jules and Vincent is probably a little cooler than Django and Schultz, but
I love the way they talk to each other, because I think that imagery has to do with why the poster is up, but the way that they talk to each other goes completely against that imagery. They just talk to each other like coworkers. They don't talk like cool guys.
Yeah.
They talk like two dudes who spend a lot of time together and like, oh, how was your vacation? Oh, they talk about burgers weird over there and shit.
Yeah.
I love that they're so comfortable about talking about massaging people's feet. Too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the foot fucking master.
It's like an intimate conversation, but also like just peppered with like just curse words to like get away from that weird intimacy of what they're talking about.
Yeah. The way Vincent steps a little closer to Jules when he says like, "Would you give a man a foot massage?"
Fuck you.
Yeah. And then in the diner at the end, another really good indicator that I only picked up when we were watching it was when they're in the diner and they're talking to each other and they have that little bit of banter, like they have to be 3 times more charming than that fucking pig from whatever the show is called. We have to be one charming motherfucking pig. And then Vincent just says like, "I'm glad to see you're lightening up a little bit." Like you've been so dark and down ever since that thing happened.
Shot someone in the head.
Since we got shot and all the stuff with Marvin went down. But like the fact that they have enough knowledge of each other to know when one of them isn't feeling good.
Yeah.
I think that's a good indicator of like where their friendship is at. Jules and Vincent. Anyway, Leah, did you
Jules and Vincent?
Jules and Vincent is yours as well? All right. Yeah, I think I don't think there are really any other big ones. No. The Harvey Keitel and Tim Roth in Reservoir Dogs make a really good screen pair. They do some great work together. Including, like, there was a YouTube video I watched that pointed out that the cafe scene or the diner scene at the beginning of Reservoir Dogs sets up so many of the character dynamics that play out through the rest of that movie. Case in point, Harvey Keitel and Tim Roth are sitting right next to each other. Like, they're clearly friends. Harvey Keitel, therefore, is going to be really fucking sad when he finds out that Tim Roth has been a cop this whole time.
Yeah. And also, too, you have that, like, I think it kind of might get lost until you watch Reservoir Dogs a few times, but he really puts his neck out for a guy he doesn't even know. Yeah. Like, especially, they just learned each other's names an hour ago. Right. Like, so I think that they have a really... I could also see somebody saying that, but it's really hard to compare that to, like, Jules and Vincent, or, my opinion, Django and Schultz.
Also, gotta give a shout-out to Bud and Elle.
Yeah.
From Kill Bill, who their like antagonism towards each other is really fun to watch. Yeah. But all right, do you have any other superlatives that you want to talk about?
I do not.
Any that you want to talk about, Leah?
I don't think so.
All right, it looks like it's time to talk about our list.
our rankings
that I just constructed.
I was going to say, did you make your own?
No, I didn't know we were. I mean, I had a number 1 spot, and that was.
Oh, okay.
That's the most important one.
We like to fill people in on this show.
Yeah. No preparation. Yeah, throw you to the dogs.
So how? Clearly, I think we all didn't completely agree. I know Ben and I didn't agree, and I have a feeling I'm a little bit out with you too, Leah. But okay. So how do we want to do this?
I need to admit something to the listeners and you. I haven't seen Jackie Brown.
That's okay.
Shut it down. I think
you should watch it sometime. It's really good.
It's all that is actually a good way to say what you had mentioned earlier, Ben. Is that all of these movies are awesome? Like the worst Quentin Tarantino movie is still, better than some directors' best.
The worst Quentin Tarantino movie is called Reservoir Dogs, and it's still. You're right. It is. Reservoir Dogs is better than.
Okay. All right. I like this. All right. So I think Ben and I we'll start with that. Ben and I agree that Reservoir Dogs is the least awesome.
Yeah, that's a good way to put
film. And I flippity flop on that one with Jackie Brown, which you haven't seen, but Jackie Brown's more of a film than Reservoir Dogs. Like Reservoir Dogs is kind of a cool idea that could have been part of a bigger movie, I think. But I don't know. So what would you say is your least favorite, Leah?
Whew, you guys are not going to like me. So I am not sure the second half of Hateful Eight makes up for the first half of Hateful Eight. The only thing tolerable about that beginning half was when Kurt Russell, fluffed his mustache.
Makes me want a horse laugh.
You wanna spit some real shit.
I think if I rewatched it, I would like it more, but I was like, do I have to endure this the entire time? Is this a horse carriage scene for the entire movie?
Y'all got me talking politics. That movie has so many... okay.
I like the first half of the Hateful Eight far more than the second half.
All right, okay. I did not understand when we were... Because I messaged him while I had seen the first half, and I was like... do people call, or did he decide to name it Hateful Eight because he knew everyone would hate it so much? And then he went on a diatribe and I stopped reading because
I wrote a fucking essay that clearly had spoilers that I didn't mark out.
So what is it about Hateful Eight that you have the first half and second half, which at least we can agree the first half of that movie is very different from the second half.
I think it made me feel dumb, like I was missing something. I'm like, I do not know enough about Reconstruction era, United States to understand the dynamics of what is happening right now. I also had just watched Django, and I was like, we're really into bounty hunters, huh? That's
true. That's a fair point. They're kind of the mafia men of the Wild West in the South.
I think that's probably a good time to bring this up, is that when I tried to rank these, it's hard to rank something, and I tried to focus on strictly in 2017, if you're watching these films, how good are they compared to each other, and it's hard to rank a film and not consider things like context to when it came out. And I think that the context of the Hateful Eight is a lot cooler than the Hateful Eight. Like, everything with the 70mm film, I think I talked about this a little bit last week, and the really good score and all the homages to other things that I like a lot. I think that makes it a cooler film than it actually is if you're just talking about how good of a movie it is. And that is why it's kind of lower on the list for me. Not that low, though.
Sorry. I did love the beautiful shots of the horses running for some reason, and I don't know why I like them, because I hated how slow-paced the beginning of the movie was, but I was like, this is nice. Could watch more of this.
Yeah. So that's fair. And what about Reservoir Dogs? Why do you feel, Ben, that it... Because I agree with you, but why do you feel that
I don't know why. I might just need to watch it again, having watched all the rest of them. Yeah. And having more of an idea now, because for this rewatch, that was the first one that I rewatched. So I didn't really, I don't know, I don't think I got everything from it.
It's a couple months ago now, too.
That was a couple months ago now. A couple months full of beautiful Tarantino experiences that I've had. So I might just have to revisit Reservoir Dogs, and this list could get shaken up. But Reservoir Dogs, for me, feels like he's out to prove himself. Feels like he's out to tell the cleverest story he can tell. And probably even actually the bigger reason than that is that his direction isn't as good. I think he came into his own as a director, as a capturer of images and moments.
Yeah.
He came into his own on Pulp Fiction.
I think that is a big... The thing about Reservoir Dogs is it really shows there's a lot of violence and a lot of dialogue. And those are kind of the two Tarantino, things.
I don't even know if there's that much violence. Like, there's
there's
very impactful violence.
I will say, not so much, I guess, violence, but there's a lot of just blood
Yelling.
and yelling. There's a lot of
at each
screaming
other.
in that movie and guys laying on the floor dying the whole time. And
I think that a lot of people think that there's a lot of violence in Tarantino films, and there is, but I don't think he ever does or has a violent scene and not have it be meaningful, unless the violence is to show that life is meaningless.
As in Kill Bill.
Yeah.
As in The House of Blue Leaves.
And I think for me, it's just that there's not much of a movie with Reservoir Dogs. It was like one cool idea that he stretched out into a movie of, what if you have these characters in this situation, but instead of it being like a whodunit, whodunit. Like, and the tension is that you're trying to wonder if he's going to get out of this, and that the character that Harvey Keitel's fighting for, or they're trying to figure out the rat, and the one guy they're saying, like, he took a bullet for this, he's not the rat. Like,
right.
He's the rat. Like, yeah. And I think that is
that
interesting.
kind of dramatic irony is pretty tasty.
It doesn't... It is tasty. Very succulent. But, as far as a film, there's not a whole lot going on.
What do you like about it, Leah? Why is it so high on your list?
Is it? No.
It's not like super high. It's just it's higher than my list consists of 7 since I haven't seen Jackie Brown, and it's higher than Django because Django is just like a little too campy for me, and also I'm not super into westerns, so I feel like not a lot of it went over my head. I was like, I get what you're doing, I just don't like it all that much.
I don't have a connection to this imagery.
Yeah. And I'm also a very like dialogue based person. I'm like, wit. Like I'm the same way with the rap that I prefer. I'm like, it's not about the beat. I'm not like an MF Doom kind of person. I want those sweet rhymes.
Give me those references.
Yeah. So I enjoy the dialogue, I guess.
That's a good reason. That's a good reason to like it.
So number 7?
Number 7.
For me, Jackie Brown.
Me, Jackie Brown as well. I don't know if we have that much to say about Jackie Brown, as like 1/3 of the table hasn't seen it.
I actually have a lot to say. So.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Out with it.
I haven't seen it. That was the joke there.
I don't really get jokes.
Oh shit. Yeah, we don't do jokes on this show.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did we not brief you on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jackie Brown, great movie, but it's an adaptation. So it has a different feel from other Tarantino movies for me, and I don't know, it's a really good movie.
Yeah.
But not as good as like Tarantino's own completely original material, though Tarantino does always draw from other sources and draw from blah blah blah. And all of his movies are adaptations to some degree.
I didn't know, weirdly enough, after all these years, I didn't know until after we did our Jackie Brown episode that it was an adaptation.
Elmore Leonard.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
His novel Rum Punch.
Oh. See, I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
But for me, and that explains, I think, why for me it gets kind of low, because even though it's a full movie and a good movie, it kind of feels the least like a Tarantino movie. It has those elements. I was going to say something and I decided not to, so I won't. But
Elements of...
It where we were discussing at one point, I don't know if it was on the podcast or not, how Boondock Saints feels like a cheap ripoff of a Tarantino movie.
We'll talk about that later.
Oh, well, I have a question that people listening to this can't see. Do you own 2 copies of Boondock Saints, or do you own Boondock Saints 1 and 2?
I own 2 copies of the first one and the second one. Okay. No, the reason for that is, as everybody can see in this room, I like media, and my fiance does not like it as much as I do, so when we moved in together, I put her movies on my shelves because she didn't want her 12 DVDs on a shelf in the living room, and she also happens to own a copy of Boondock Saints. Some of those movies aren't mine. Precious isn't mine. Pride and Prejudice isn't mine.
Oh my gosh, the Pride and Prejudice 2005 movie is like the top 5 for me.
You want to talk about that, though? She alone has 2 copies of that film. So, there are some repeats on here. A lot of period. None of these period dramas are mine, except Django. No.
What were we talking about?
We were talking about
Jackie Brown. Right?
And
You were saying there are elements of...
It almost feels like... It's still better than Boondock Saints, but it feels like somebody trying to make a Tarantino movie that isn't Tarantino.
Oh.
And I think that is just because Tarantino is trying to adapt another person's story.
He's adapting where he got a lot of his ideas.
Yeah, so I think it just
from
doesn't...
old crime novels. I kind of like it in the structure of his career as like a farewell to crime.
Yeah.
You know, he did Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, which are both steeped in crime fiction, crime films, as well as other influences, of course, but largely crime for the stories. And then he does like an adaptation of something that inspired him for those two movies because he knows he's going to go on to making fucking kung fu westerns for the rest of his career.
Yeah. Plus, I think too, like maybe with the exception of Jackie Brown herself, there aren't too many iconic characters.
I think Ordell's probably pretty iconic. Sam Jackson in that movie gives one of his best performances in a Tarantino movie.
I think,
in my opinion,
for me, the fact that it is Samuel L. Jackson. So when you're talking about Tarantino movies, you have Jules, you have Steven. He consistently gives these amazing performances in these Tarantino films. I think for me, Ordell doesn't. It's just not the same.
He doesn't really rank with like Steven and Jules.
So that's
Jackie Brown.
I don't have much to say about it other than that.
Number 6.
Leah?
We talked about Django for me already because I haven't seen Jackie Brown, but Django was 6. I mean, I enjoyed seeing Jamie Foxx partially nude a lot.
A lot.
Me too.
Great movie for the female gaze.
But yeah, it's just very campy and just like over the top, and I don't know.
Weirdly enough, Ben taught me of the female gaze. I had never realized that was a thing.
I don't even know if the female gaze is a thing that people talk about. It's just my corruption of the male gaze, which is definitely something that people talk about.
But it's
a good thing.
After you pointed that out, I realized like that works on me. Like when I watch these Tarantino movies, I'm like, man, Bruce Willis looks fucking good in this movie.
We're gonna talk about some Eli Roth at the top here.
And Django looks, he looks sexy in Django, and so I was glad to see that. Like that also, it's just the angles and how they're shown. Like men are just as attractive to me in these movies. I'm like, all right, Bruce Willis. Like
that's the kind of complete control that Tarantino exerts over your like emotional state while you're watching one of his movies. Is like he makes you feel whatever he wants you to feel for the purposes of the story. That's why he's the best.
That's why he's the best. Yeah. What's your number 6, Ben?
My number 6 is Death Proof.
Me too.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that movie a lot. Oh, it's a little higher on yours, Leah, isn't it?
I will say, I love Death Proof. I really
I
love
respect
Death Proof.
the hell out of Death Proof.
And that was one.
Did you just break up with Death Proof? I don't love Death Proof. I respect Death Proof.
I still want to be friends with Death Proof.
I respect Death Proof's right to exist.
And for me, Death Proof started higher and then kept like sliding one back and then one back. And I think the fact for me that Death Proof exists because it's a part of this Grindhouse double feature. It's a themed movie. And I think that it kind of... It doesn't... As one movie, it seems kind of... It's like kind of like that context thing. Like, if you were to just watch Death Proof without any context, you'd be like, well, that was a strange movie. And then, like, when you know the context of the Grindhouse double feature... You're like, oh, so he's doing this other thing, and he did it with this guy, and okay, like...
The thing about that is, for me, like, I knew the context of it. I actually saw Planet Terror and Death Proof in 2 different parts, because I had to leave halfway through the movie, because a group of friends went to go see a different movie, and I was like, no. So I saw Planet Terror, and then I had to come back, and the guy selling me the ticket was like, it's halfway through, like, it's almost over. I'm like, no, it's a double feature, you don't understand. So I had to sneak into that movie to see it again. Yeah.
About Death Proof, though, thinking about it more, I'm conflicted about Death Proof. Because there are some moods that I can be in where Death Proof is the number one Quentin Tarantino movie that I should watch, right? In fact, I think in the future, if I ever like have an inkling that I want to watch Death Proof, that's going to be my note that I should watch Death Proof and then watch Kill Bill right after, because they make a really good double feature. I guess it might technically be a triple feature. That's like 6 hours of movies. But yeah, in Death Proof, that car chase is one of the best things that Quentin Tarantino has ever put on film.
And I feel like this movie was just, like, built for me to love it. It combines my love of, like, serial killers with feminism, with, like, this deep-rooted love for the original Mad Max I had from when I watched it
my God.
when I was a child.
Kurt, we're going to do a Mad Max episode. We're having Leah back on.
Tom Hardy.
Oh, Fury Road?
Well, I assumed that you were going to watch the whole
Well, yeah, we'll
Mad
watch
Max
all of them. We'll even watch Thunderdome. You haven't seen any of these movies.
I've never seen any Mad Max films.
We're doing it. They're great. Thunderdome is a movie that people shouldn't watch, but we'll watch it anyway.
I like to watch things that aren't good sometimes.
But yeah, Death Proof. That's where Death Proof sits for me. Is that just where I'm at right now and where I think I'm at most of the time? Death Proof is pretty low on the list. But it's kind of a lateral shift from the rest of his movies. There are some times when I'm just in the mindset where it's like Death Proof is all I want right now.
Death Proof brings up some questions about violence that I think Inglourious Basterds also brings up, where he, like, pairs it with, like, Kurt Russell's violence in that movie with the women, like, beating the shit out of him, and you're like, is this okay?
Yeah.
The same with Inglourious Basterds, where you're like, so the Nazi rhetoric is bad, but when the American rhetoric is even more violent against the Nazis, is that okay?
I think yes.
I think it is.
Just as I think that we were saying, that kick that she delivers to his face is not horrifying in the way that it should be.
It feels good, but should you feel good about it?
You're with them. You're like, yay!
But it's just a movie. Like, that sounds cliche to say, but that's where I always come back with Quentin Tarantino. Is like he's not depicting the world as it is.
Oh,
or like,
I'm not saying that.
I know you're not, but I'm just kind of giving the way that I have processed, like, the way that I handle Quentin Tarantino's violence.
Yeah, I'm not chastising his violence. I'm saying I think he's telling us to think about it.
Yes.
Like, should you feel okay about this?
Right.
And I feel like the answer is no. I see that we've taken that in a different way.
So you think that Quentin Tarantino is making a negative commentary, a critical commentary on screen violence?
Yeah, well, not on screen violence, on violence.
On violence in general.
He's pro screen violence.
Okay, yeah, see, that's what I'm trying to say as well. I don't think that Quentin Tarantino would necessarily advocate violence in the real world, but I think that he would advocate it as a way for people in movies to get what they deserve. Because, like, what are you going to watch, a fucking Nazi tribunal in a film? No, you want to watch him get burned to death in a theater. Like, violence...
You only have so much time.
Yeah, it's all about economy.
I think the biggest thing, I think I talked about it before, too, that I'm torn on it, and it's part of the reason I think Death Proof slides back a little bit on mine, is that it's so split into the two segments that you have all this... You have these characters that you meet and the setting that you meet them in, and then it builds and builds and builds, and then they all die, and then instantly you're like, oh, hey, and now there are these four women, and they're different, so now you got to get to know them. And I even like the second group. I find a lot more personal.
I think you're
supposed to.
Yeah,
the first time you're kind of like not Killer Mike.
Hey.
Stuntman Mike. He is a killer though. Stuntman Mike's side, and then in the second one, he cries like a baby, and you really like the women that kill him. But for me, it's every time I watch that movie, when I know what's going to happen, when I thought the first time I didn't know what's going to happen, I find that jarring. There's kind of like that. Oh, okay, well they're all dead. Like. So who are these people? Like, why do I care about them now? Like, and then you care about them more, so it works. That's why I'm torn, but that's hard for me to swallow every time.
Yeah. Anyway, what's next?
Number 5? For me, The Hateful Eight.
Same.
Yeah.
Actually, same.
We've covered it.
Yeah.
We've covered that, yeah. Hateful Eight kind of wavers for me. I have like 3 tiers of Tarantino movies. You're like top, middle, and lower. Hateful Eight is either the highest of the low movies or the lowest of the middle movies for me. Kind of depending on which half I'm thinking about more. I'm thinking about the first half. It's like, oh yeah, it's like experimental theater, and then
really
the back
love that
half.
First half.
Fucking love the first half, and then the back half is like, oh yeah, it's violence, and it kind of goes on a little too long for me. But then it ends with that great,
Oh my god.
that absolves all the movie's other sins for me.
The final scene where they're hanging Daisy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to Ben about it. It's like Tarantino never lets you forget about the human body. Like he'll have like a ton of dialogue and you'll be like, oh, what a nice story. But like they are both shot and dying and trying to hang this woman, and it's so gruesome that
you feel like you start thinking about like, oh, their muscles must be like squeezing on bullets right now.
And
like,
then,
what does that feel like?
And then it's juxtaposed with this really like I don't know, like very intellectual part intellectual commentary where they're reading the letter, and then he's like, "That's a nice bit about Mary Todd."
yeah, literally as you've just seen Daisy be hanged, not in like the nice way where your neck breaks, in like the bad way,
the choking way,
where you slowly get lifted up and you just choke out. And then they read the whole letter out loud, which has not happened yet in the movie. So you've seen is John Ruth reading it, and you've heard the Mary Todd bit, but when he says he likes it. But then Mannix reads the whole letter for the first time in the film, and that's how it ends. Great. That's a great ending for that movie. But it is not enough to put it up to number 4, which for me is Django.
For me, it's Inglourious Basterds.
Shut it down.
Yeah. Here's where we're gonna get into it. So, should I just start by defending myself?
No, I don't want this to feel like a series of attacks.
I don't want this to feel like Leah and Ben are sitting on one side of a table, both looking at me who disagrees.
I don't want this to feel like some kind of tribunal.
Yeah, where I'm in the corner of the room and I'm defending my choice.
Yeah. But maybe we put a pin in that.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll come
and
back to
we'll finish our lists and then we'll talk Bastards.
Okay. So what's number 3?
Okay, so I have like a little like arrows with a question mark because like my whole worldview has changed since we were watching these movies. So I have Kill Bill and Pulp Fiction sort of tied, and I cannot like decide which one.
Yeah.
Same. I literally wrote Kill after number 3 and then crossed it out and wrote Pulp.
So I don't know.
Pulp Fiction's my 3rd favorite.
Yeah.
And I think...
So you like Kill Bill better?
I do like Kill Bill.
Okay, because I think that's really what we're talking about here. Is Kill Bill or Pulp Fiction the better movie?
When we started this, before we started ranking them, my opinion for years has been, I will admit that Pulp Fiction is the superior Tarantino movie. And now it's number 3, which is weird. But I said, I will admit that it is the best Tarantino movie, but my personal favorite is Kill Bill.
Mm-hmm. I had a similar line where I was like, Pulp Fiction's my favorite of Quentin Tarantino's movies that I had to fucking go way back on, because now it's number 3 for me, too. What's happened to my world?
So, I think, I don't know.
Kill Bill is the first movie of his that I saw, and it got me super hyped about him, and it pulled me in, and it had like a female protagonist, and I was like, this is awesome, and it taught me new things and was amazing, but I hadn't seen Pulp Fiction yet, so I couldn't like do a comparison when I first saw Kill Bill.
Kill Bill was the first Tarantino movie I saw in theaters, and like that was a really big experience for me because of like loving Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs back then. It was like, I'm living the history now.
Yeah. Part of it now.
Yeah.
I just think, for me, I think culturally, Pulp Fiction probably had the biggest effect.
The world was primed for that effect to happen, and I think Kill Bill honestly impacted culture as much as anything. It brought so much Asian cinema into people's like worlds. It changed the landscape of kind of cinematic influence. Like nowadays, you can make a genre-hopping movie that like has commentary about different national cinemas, and people don't really bat an eyelash. Back in the day, Kill Bill was, I think, one of the biggest examples of that in existence, right?
And
Certainly...
It's hard for me to know whether it had such a big influence on culture at the time, or whether it had such a big influence on me because I was a teenager at the time and I was like, it was not world changing, but I was like, got super into movies after that. So, yeah, it's hard for me to separate those two things. And I'm like, how can I tell this feeling versus the reality of what's going on? But
that's the big difference with me too, is that I don't know. It's hard for me to say looking back now, but I've never been a huge fan of like anime, but a lot of my friends liked anime. So I think when I saw Kill Bill, anime was already something that I was very aware of and already a big part of my world, even though I didn't really like any of it, that I probably didn't notice how significant the Japanese influence on Kill Bill was, because Japanese, and like I had mentioned earlier, I don't know if it was before the podcast, my friend Mike really liked Japanese horror, so there were a lot of Japanese film was already a very big part of my life, so I didn't realize, or maybe still don't realize, the effect that Kill Bill had on people, because I had already been so into Japanese film.
Yeah.
The reason that Pulp Fiction, I think I'm going Pulp Fiction second and Kill Bill third, but the reason that I put it that way is because I think Pulp Fiction does this really interesting thing with storytelling, with the vignettes and like moving around and the interconnectedness of it, where Kill Bill has interesting ways of showing the story. Like when we get O-Ren's story, we have the anime section where she's like under the bed, and that was like crazy for me, and somehow I felt even more connected to her and felt bad for her when she was a cartoon than she was an actual human. But it's like, we've seen the hero story before, we've seen stories for vengeance before, so it wasn't as radical as Pulp Fiction was.
Can I talk about my favorite storytelling moment from Kill Bill?
Okay.
My favorite moment like that, like just little storytelling tricks that he pulls, is in Kill Bill Volume 2. Beatrix is at her lowest point in the story. She's buried alive, right?
Literally.
Lowest she's at
point.
physically. That's what I meant. Yeah, she's physically at the lowest point, and also in terms of her character arc, she is at her lowest point. She's descended, right? She's
gonna die.
She's been defeated, and the way that she gets out of it is by remembering the time when she was literally on top of a mountain, training with.
The thing is, I understand metaphors.
I don't know if that's really a metaphor. It's just a little thing. It's just a little trick. It's just one of those cute little storytelling tricks that Quentin Tarantino built into his movies. Yeah, I don't know. They're pretty much tied for me. But I list Kill Bill ahead of Pulp Fiction, and I'm not really sure why.
I think... See, it's really hard. But Pulp Fiction, for me, the more I watch it, the more segmented it feels. And you kind of, like... You know, we talked about that the Bonnie situation for me was like, I'm always like, oh yeah, that has to happen now. And I think the more I watch it, the more individual in each anthology feels. And I think that it's I don't know.
I feel like they all come together really well. I feel like they all share a really good theme of like the moments that change people's lives, the moments that change people's worldviews. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Well, I think it's also a good reminder because just for me as a person, I'm an only child and I tend to like not think that the world revolves around me, but I need like physical reminders that other stuff is going on. So it really showed like, oh, these people are connected, they're in the same city, this is happening, but all this stuff is happening to like different people at different times. So
that was kind of a genre of movie that Pulp Fiction helped spark, was the like LA everything is connected story, like a bunch of crazy stuff can happen on the streets of LA when you just get out there kind of story. Paul Thomas Anderson's Magnolia is another really good example of that type of movie.
I wonder too though, that I had never thought about that, but I'd just been saying we might not. I wonder if we would have Grand Theft Auto if we didn't have Pulp Fiction.
I doubt it. I think Grand Theft Auto you can kind of safely lump into the fallout, the like cultural fallout of Quentin Tarantino. Like, Quentin Tarantino brought so much crime stuff into the fore and showed you that you don't need to follow the same old cliches when you're making a crime movie. You can come up with new stuff sometimes. Then, granted, most of the people who took that lesson did not come up with new stuff. They just kind of cribbed Quentin Tarantino. It's like, oh, we want hitmen talking about mundane shit.
Yeah.
That's what makes a movie good, right? That's what makes good dialogue.
Just be blasé about the human condition.
Exactly.
I will say, though, that I did have one superlative I'm seeing here that I forgot, and that reminded me of it, was the most suspenseful scene, and possibly my favorite scene in any Tarantino movie, is Mia's overdose in Pulp Fiction. I think that still, knowing what happens, I still watch that, and I'm on like the edge of my seat every time. And
that shot when he lifts up the the screen on the door, the like shade on the door, and you just see the car go by the front door on the lawn.
Yeah, I love too you just see the street and then John Travolta peel around the corner, and then have to straighten the car, and like it's not a perfect, awesome driver turn. It's like
I feel like my top 3 most suspenseful scenes all are from Inglourious Basterds.
Well, because the opening scene is my most suspenseful scene.
Definitely that one. I'm not going to get into. We'll
talk about Inglourious Basterds. Let's get through the rest of our fucking list.
So number 2,
Kill Bill for me.
Yeah, I'm going with Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, like Pulp Fiction a little more than Kill Bill.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I
it's
didn't
hard
rewatch
because...
Kill Bill though, so I need to rewatch it.
That's true.
Django is my number 2.
Interesting.
Strangely enough, and I think, that now I'm questioning myself because I'm thinking context, and I try not to, but I love that just American history part of it. And I love how the characters develop, and I think it's just the biggest thing about it is that it's definitely a saga. You start out with these characters that get together for this purpose of finding these bounties, and then they find them, and then they keep working together, and then they're like, oh, we'll do this, and they continue to be bounty hunters for a little while, and then they go to Candyland. And I think it has that kind of the aspect of Pulp Fiction where it's these different stories, but it's just happens to be the same characters on this long journey. And every time I watch it, I think I like it a little bit more. I think Django has some of the most powerful imagery out of any Tarantino.
The cotton with the blood on it.
The blood-splattered cotton, right out the gate with Django dropping the sack that's on him, and you see all the scars. Yeah. And on the opposite side of that, when you see Broomhilda's scars, and it's not like when you see Django, you're like, oh shit. But when you see Broomhilda, they're very like shameful scars.
Broomhilda, the way that Broomhilda's scars are revealed is also really intentional, because Steven knows that they have a connection, and he's trying to fuck with Django. And Steven totally instigates that.
I don't know which scene came out first, though, but that scene was very reminiscent of Game of Thrones for me with Sansa. Did you make it that far?
I've never seen Game of Thrones.
It's not to get off on a tangent, but it was much more like heart-wrenching with Sansa. I was like, oh god.
Well, I guess it's like Sansa is a child.
Yeah.
And that has a lot to do with it. I think I remember the moment in the story when that happens. I haven't seen that.
And
episode.
the rescuing for Hildy happens a lot quicker. Like, you are just, nobody is allowed to clothe Sansa for a while.
by the time they're there, by the time they're at Candyland, you pretty much know that things are going to come out alright. Like, Tarantino isn't one to throw like a curveball at you with an ending. Something
that is also interesting about that is, like, what Django wants. He wants to save Hildy, but as an audience member, like, my values are like, I care about Schultz. I don't want him to die. But, like, Django has that, like, steely reserve that you see when he's yelling at that slave to stop looking at him, where I was like, why are you doing that? And then it reveals why he's doing it. And he never forgets that, but I feel like as an audience member, I don't necessarily forget why they're going on this mission, but I have other things to care about while I'm watching the movie, and you're like, oh, like, he cares about Schultz, but he obviously cares about Hildy more.
Yeah. I don't know, there's just a lot in that movie really works for me. I think, like, in Django. The scene where Django is begging them not to whip Broomhilda.
That whole sequence is way too much for me. Like, that whole sequence is shot like an old horror movie. The song it's shot like fucking Cannibal Holocaust.
I was actually gonna say Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah,
it's that style of like Italian derived gritty backwoods horror, which works really well for the horrors of slavery. I think that's a pretty inspired choice.
The song that plays when they're running, trying
freedom.
to escape, and there's just a lot of like tear jerking moments in Django, and not to mention it has that American history, which I'm very interested in.
I think that as a historical film, it's interacting with all the other historical films that have been made about slavery and finding them to be insufficient.
Yeah.
Saying, like, you guys have not been honest about what slavery was like. Django is probably the most immediate depiction of slavery on film that I know of. And for that, I would laud it.
Well, because Django is such a character, and because I voted him not because I voted him most stylish, but because he is so stylish, and he is such a character that it's harder for me to empathize with him than it is, like, say, Shoshana or somebody. Like, we get his backstory, but...
Not really.
We get why his motivation.
Yeah, we know why. We know that he was on the Karukan plantation. We know that he and Hildy have fallen in love, tried to escape together. I think that's all the backstory we get. And
that combined with the campiness of the movie, and then also the soundtrack, like, it just creates this disconnect where I'm like, I get it. Like, I get who I'm supposed to side with, but I don't have, like, as much of a pull with Django.
I think of him as a superhero, and I usually think of Django as a superhero movie, where the first half is the origin story, and then the second half is like a movie starring that superhero. So yeah, there is that remove there, but and that's why Django is so far down on my list.
Strangely enough, though, you two have, where I am not so eloquent, you two have just eloquently explained why I feel that way about Inglourious Bastards. Aside from Shoshana, we'll get into it. But that is kind of the same thing for me with Inglourious, where aside from Shoshana, you have these characters that are propaganda, and aside from me already knowing that Nazis are bad and the bastards are good, I don't have a whole lot that draws me.
Are they, though?
Are the bastards good?
Are the bastards good?
We will find out. So there's a lot that just, at the end of it, there's just a lot in Django that works for me, and I find it very emotional, and the journey that they go on feels like a saga. To me, I feel like the Django and Schultz that are at the end of it are very different from the Django and Schultz at the beginning, and the things they do are, it's a very segmented movie of these different stories that really help you connect to the characters. So that's it for me, number one. Oh, I wonder.
The movie we can't stop talking about, Inglourious Bastards.
And you too, I think.
Yeah.
And Kill Bill for me. I just think Kill Bill
is a respectable choice.
Is a masterpiece. I could say that confidently. Like before, I was like, Kill Bill's my personal favorite, but I think Pulp Fiction's the best. Fuck that. Kill Bill's the best.
You know, going in. I went and read as many top 10 or top whatever, he doesn't have 10 movies, but top Quentin Tarantino movie lists online as I could find, and not a lot of them put Kill Bill at the top.
I don't remember who posted it, but there was one that was like all 8 Quentin Tarantino movies lovingly ranked, and I remember that it stuck out to me that it was lovingly ranked, which I think meant that I think they came from a similar place as us, where they really like all of them. It's
none
hard
of these
to
movies
rank
are
them.
bad.
And not only that, this isn't some Watch Mojo list like where we're gonna like what number one's gonna be.
Right.
We're gonna make you think about this, and Kill Bill was number 1 in that film.
I don't need other people to tell me what I think. Which I'm sure if a student said that to me, I would lose my mind. So
a lot of the list that I did look at, though, I will mention, and I think it's fair, didn't consider them to be one movie, each volume. And I will say that separately, neither of them, they have to be one film for it to be the masterpiece.
That's true.
Each one lacks a lot.
Yeah, there's something missing from each one.
And
Just
also,
Volume 1 alone doesn't have the character development. Volume 2 doesn't have any big fights.
Hateful Nine is a bad title.
It's just too many characters. That's why there are 8 bastards. It's because it's too many. If you get one more than 8, you're fucked.
So I think we kind of know where I come from on Kill Bill, why it's my favorite. So we can start talking about Bastards to
Thank
figure out the disconnect between you two and I.
Into it.
Oh no! Here come the notes.
Got some notes here.
Completely unprepared.
I have a diagram that I drew of the structure of the story,
and I'm just like bagel. I'll get my bagel for this.
I will just reiterate briefly what I mentioned about Kill Bill and. Not Kill Bill. Tarantino's new name is Kill Bill. Okay. About Tarantino and violence, and I think that really shows through in this movie, especially in those first scenes where we get to know the IBs with Brad Pitt yelling at his troops of jolly men ready to go kill the Nazis, and then that's sort of like right after that Hitler is screaming.
The jump cut.
Yeah, the jump cut to Hitler screaming also about killing people. But
there is a difference there.
There is a difference, and I would argue that the difference is not any of moral quality, but it's to show how brash and American the Inglourious Bastards are. Like, Brad Pitt is, like, crude, telling them they're gonna, like, chop off and sculpt them, and,
See, I think that Brad Pitt's dialogue is smarter than anybody gives him credit for. I think that he's an intelligent simpleton.
Yeah.
Like that moment with sorry, I totally interrupted you.
No, I would just say that he has leadership qualities. I wouldn't say that they are of high intelligence.
I would say that they are of high intelligence.
I don't think he's dumb. Right. I'm just saying that the two scenes put next to each other that way, for me, told me, like, hey, there isn't much of a difference when you just say generally that you want to kill a whole population of people, whether that is Jews or Nazis. You shouldn't want to sculpt anybody. Like,
I respectfully disagree. I think that you should want to scalp Nazis. Because Nazis deserve to be scalped. Nazis have... not in real life.
Nazis deserve to be
film.
Stopped. I don't think that lowering yourself to butchering people...
By being a high-ranking Nazi officer. Or even a Nazi foot soldier. In the world of cinema that this is. Not in real life. I think all Nazis should have been given fair trials and... gone to prison for life, nobody should be killed, capital punishment should be outlawed everywhere. But in the language of cinema, in the movies, where death is not the real thing that it is in the real world, it's this fake construct.
I think there is a reason, now I'm just interrupting you.
No, go ahead.
That Tarantino starts the movie as a fairy tale, once upon a time. And it's not just because it's a rewriting of history. I think that he's showing that even in history today, Nazis have been villainized so much that we forget their human quality. Mm-hmm. And that you shouldn't want to murder humans. I'm just going to come back to that.
What do you make of the part at the end, when he seems to be about to make that point? After, I said his name earlier, Zoller. After Private Zoller goes up to the room with Shoshana, and... she shoots him, right? And then she sees on the film, like, the part of Nation's Pride that is supposed to show that even after he's killed all these people, he retains his humanity. And then he shoots her. The Nazi don't got no humanity,
no,
Leah.
He does have humanity. It's just a different facet of humanity. He is the most annoying person in the history of the world. And that isn't evil... he's annoying.
To me, he represents the man who will not take no for an answer.
Yes, and that's human, an awful side of humanity.
Yes.
But he's not a big villain who is going to wipe out an entire population. He's one of many.
He's proud of the people he killed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
to me, not in real life. But in the movie...
so is Shoshana, though, and she has a right to be.
Yeah, Shoshana should be proud of all those deaths that she did.
I think we're arguing a separate thing. We gotta get back on track with demolishing Kurt. As a
guy who fell back into that, I think you guys are both, like, yelling this... you agree with each other. Like,
I agree. I
think we have a very subtle disagreement
Yeah.
about Inglourious Bastards and the way that it depicts violence, but that's maybe a separate
We both
discussion.
like the violence.
We both love what it's doing, but I think we think it's making opposite points.
Okay.
However, What were you saying about Inglourious Basterds?
However, we're both still right.
Okay,
Kurt.
let's move on from the scene with Brad Pitt and the juxtaposition of Hitler in the speech, which was great.
The way it depicts Hitler is really fascinating also. Hitler is never, other than at the theater at the end, Hitler is never depicted in the chronology of the film. It's always a jump cut to another time, right? The jump cut implies that Hitler saying 99999 is supposed to happen while Brad Pitt is saying it, but then you discover that it's actually a flashback, or it's that was a flash forward, and then it flashes back again to the thing that happened. It happens again later with Hitler deciding to go to the premiere. It's a really smart way to depict a historical character like that, I think. That's a completely isolated point. Just something that I really liked about Inglourious Basterds. Just something that I really love about that movie.
While we're throwing out isolated points, the thing that Django does with
a whole other movie.
Well, they're connected. The thing that Django does with being campy and like having music that totally doesn't fit and like throwing like I forgot the word for it, ideas of allusions to other genres in that. It doesn't work for me in Django. It does work for me in Inglourious Basterds when they're introducing the bastards and it's like total like late 70s, early 80s like montage. Like,
I love the Stieglitz. The Stieglitz one is my favorite. Where it's like, are you familiar with Private Stieglitz? Every high-ranking Nazi is familiar with Private Stieglitz, and then everyone laughs, and then the guitar riff, like Hugo Stieglitz,
and they don't ever go back to the Samuel L. Jackson like overdub of that or like the music, but you do have like hints of it when every time they meet somebody new, they're like, "Ever heard of us?" Yeah. Or like, "I don't look calm."
Oh yeah, that moment, because he does. Archie Hickox, I think is his name, goes over to talk to him. He's like, "I need to be sure that everyone's going to remain calm," and Stieglitz is just like calmly sharpening his knife.
And it feels like it should be hokey, but it just feels good.
It just works. It just works so well. Yeah. Now that you mention it, you do.
So,
and about Tarantino adding in information, like we were talking about telling us that film was very flammable. I needed that information.
I did too. He knows what the audience is going to need to know, and even if someone does know that, it acts as like fun foreshadowing to like give you a really concrete example of like, wow, this is what it's going to look like when they enact this plan. It gives you that little frisson of just, can't wait for that to happen.
And tension building scenes. Since we didn't get to that, the first scene, so tension building. Like I have so many notes. Like my first page of notes is just about that first scene.
That first scene is an incredible one-act play.
And it's so quiet, the dialogue, that when it gets loud or it gets violent, it is more impactful, obviously. But also the switch from English to French to German, you're like, I got exasperated. It was like, we're just doing this so that we understand it. And then it turns it on its head, and you're like, no,
Hans did that on purpose. Oh, you bastard.
Oh, you bastard.
Oh, you fucking prick. You Nazi asshole.
And then the contentious milk scene was also a very tense scene for me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I was holding my breath
with the pastry when she's talking to Londa. Londa has this great way of just like intruding on every chapter, because he's in every single one, but I always forget where he comes in. And it's like, well, I mean, obviously other than the first one where he's introduced. But then it's like, oh shit, he does come in this scene. And then like, oh shit, he does investigate the tavern after they're done or whatever.
And she already doesn't want to be there is the thing. So I'm already tense as a viewer because like I'm viewing things through the lens of Shoshana. And so she's already tense, and then she sees him, and like just like my stomach drops from underneath.
The pounding music starts playing, and she flashes back to that moment,
which is also reminiscent of Kill Bill for me, when that
yeah the Ironside music starts playing. But yeah, Shoshana, in that scene in particular, I love it because this seems to be Shoshana's curse throughout this whole movie, because it's the same thing that happens under the floorboards in the first chapter, is that she is cursed to constantly be in rooms where men are talking about her in a language that she doesn't understand. You know, she's always on that side of the dynamic. And then she finds a way to turn it to her murderous revenge.
And then the humor in that movie is just like perfect. It's
so on point.
BJ Novak. Just, I
The
love
little
him.
man?
The little man.
You know, I had expected you to be quite a bit smaller, or whatever Londa says. He's like, you're quite a bit taller than your reputation had led me to believe. I mean, you're small, but not circus midget small.
And I believe he's, if I recall correctly, he's so disappointed. He's like, I'm the little man? Like,
yeah,
he doesn't care that he's prisoner at that moment.
Yeah.
He's upset that he's the little man.
Yeah.
And it does that thing that Pulp Fiction does with the just talking like you're at work. Like he's sculpting a Nazi, and they're just having this conversation. Like, yeah.
Yeah, that in the very last scene,
Yeah.
right, when after they shoot the other Nazi that was driving with them, and Londa's like, "You'll be shot."
Yeah.
Shot? No, I don't think so. Chewed out, maybe. I've been chewed out before.
So, some of my problems with Inglourious
All right,
Bastards,
bring it
which
out.
I'm going to be talking at a brick wall here.
Yeah, I noticed that we didn't make eye contact with Kurt the entire. We were
That
looking
we
at
just
each other.
that was for you guys.
Thank you for letting that happen for so long.
So, two of the problems that I have in this movie, right out the gate, I will say there are times in the movie where they do work. And one is that I think for a lot of the characters in Inglourious Bastards, I wish I knew them better, or they did more. And I think Inglourious Bastards relies a lot on America's cool, fuck Nazis. So that's part of it for me. You instead of getting to know these characters as well as you could or should, you already have this, like, you're rooting for them because you know you don't like Nazis.
See,
But
if you
that's
view it from my perspective, America's not cool.
Yeah, and
Stop
I
hurting
actually
people.
and I agree with that, but I think that I guess what I'm trying to say about the whole Bastards thing is that the point there is that America is a hyper-violent, like, hellscape, but it's not as bad as Nazi Germany. It's still not as bad as Nazi Germany. Even look at what these guys are doing. It's horrifying. The violence that they are enacting upon people is horrifying. And funny. But horrifying as well. But they're still not as bad as the Nazis. It's the Dirty Dozen, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the movie that Tarantino was probably emulating most when he was writing the kind of Bastards half. If you, like, split Inglourious Bastards into two halves, which I think you should do. The Bastards are in the title, but they're kind of the secondary half. Shoshana's not in the title. She's really the main character, in my opinion.
I would agree.
Yeah.
And
but
I think...
The Bastards are a war movie, such as the type that was made in the 60s and late 50s, I think. And Shoshana is the French New Wave that emerged in the 60s, right? The Bastard side of the movie is almost cartoonish in its violence.
I think it's making fun of war movies, especially when they
Yes.
have the war movie in the movie.
Yeah, Nation's Pride. But it's a good war movie, right? Nation's Pride. Did you know Eli Roth actually directed Nation's Pride?
The movie in the
The
movie?
movie in the movie.
Oh.
Yeah, Eli Roth made the movie that is shown on that screen.
I didn't know that.
And it's a good movie. Like, it's the shots are creative, but it is ultimately morally bankrupt because it is a piece of Nazi propaganda. But the techniques that you're using are good. It's a good movie, but it's an evil movie. Mm-hmm. Whereas Shoshana's half does not have an equivalent. It's not propagandistic. It's a subtle character study. I think that's the parallel that's being drawn there, and that's why the Bastard side is so, like, ostentatious and I think you're right. It is making fun of war movies in a way. It's making fun of the, like, gung-ho nature of them, but it's also really enjoying its cake at the same time.
I think so. The time that doesn't apply, where I wish I knew the characters. Well, I still wish I knew Shoshana better, only because she's one of the best Tarantino characters ever. So, but with, like, Marcel and their motivations, like, you never question their motivations ever. Like, your whole family was killed by Nazis. Like, you in Tarantino movies, you get your revenge. That's your ticket. Mm-hmm. But I wish I knew more about them anyway, because I like them so much. Marcel is this, like, mysterious, cool, and I just wish I knew that better, and I'm in love with the character of Shosanna, so I want to know more about her, too, and I don't get as much as I want. But as far as, you know, the bastards, I think you guys are right. I think they're making fun of war movies. And
I think it's a loving parody.
Well, and that's what doesn't work for me.
It's the Cabin in the Woods of war movies.
It's
like this shit's shitty and cliche, but also really fucking fun.
And I think that for me it doesn't work because you're relying on something that you already, whether it's propaganda or a parody of something else, you're still relying on it because you know the context in another way. You don't learn these things through the bastards. You learn them because you know what war movies are like. You know what propaganda is like. And for me, I just wanted to know. I think characterization is one of the things that Tarantino is best about. And you don't really get to know many of the bastards individually. You kind of get to know the big two.
Any of the bastards that are involved intimately in a scene, you get to know pretty well. But then there are kind of the background bastards. It's like 4 bastards that you get to know. You get to know Stieglitz, you get to know the Austrian one because they're in the tavern scene. Then you get to know Omar, and you get to know Donnie. Donnie you get to know for the obvious reasons because he's the hottest one. And because he has that great scene where he's knocking the bat against the
golem. Is that what the
Hitler says, like, he is not a golem. Like, and the tracking the rumors about him.
And he comes out so intimidating, and then he's just full on, like, low class American screaming about baseball.
Yeah, full on nerd boy.
So that's tough for me. I understand it, but it just doesn't work as well as the characters in his other films for me.
Both sides of that are filled in for me by little pieces of historical context that I have. With the Bastards first, I was reading a review of Inglourious Bastards by a Jewish man who was young when World War II was going on. And the way that the review began, I'm going to paraphrase it real quick. It's something like, in 1943, I parachuted out of an airplane deep into enemy territory. I snuck into Hitler's bunker and I slit his throat and I watched him die. And then I woke up and went to middle school. So just and none of us have this experience. So for me, it was kind of hard to imagine until I read that. But if you're a young Jewish kid around the time World War II was going on, you know that somewhere in the world people are being killed just because they're like you. And I think that the kind of rage that must have instilled in some young people, not all young Jewish people, I'm not going to turn them into a monolith or something, but I think that there is a common experience among young adolescent Jews that's like, the Holocaust just fucking pisses them off, right? Like, yeah, it makes you sad, but it also makes you feel rage. And the Bastards to me represent that rage getting an outlet. Whereas usually World War II movies are about either America, yeah, America, go America, we won the war, or they're about Jews hiding.
Yeah.
And really both sides of Inglourious Bastards kind of take the piss out of the whole Jews hiding situation. But so that's what fixes the Bastards for me.
I think Tarantino is living out a lot of dreams in Inglourious Bastards. So there's
I think in all his movies.
There's the dream of killing Hitler, but then you have that scene with Mike Myers, and I don't know.
Archie Hickox?
Archie, who is a film buff. And
yeah, he's a professional film critic. He's so charming. He's so suave.
And pulled out of obscurity because he knows so much about films and he gets to kill Hitler.
Yeah, he does not.
He does not.
He doesn't end up making it there.
But they recruit him to
They recruit him, yeah. I saw Tarantino talking about that scene, and it really gave me permission to laugh at that scene more fully because he sees that as a parody of exposition. That whole scene of like, are you familiar with the films of the German Reich? Explain them to me. It's like, yes, because the audience needs to know this. You need to have a character explain it to another character. Mike Myers is so perfect in that scene. The size of the folder that he's looking at is just, it's equivalent to the pipe that Londa smokes. But yes, I agree with you.
I often don't know whether I'm supposed to laugh in a Tarantino movie.
I think you usually are.
But I like that feeling of like, am I the only one?
It's
Is this happening?
Yeah. And I guess to loop back to what I was saying before, so that piece of historical context about young Jews around the time of World War II makes me really feel for the bastards are the fantasy of an adolescent Jew having to deal with the fact that there are Nazis in the world, right? You imagine these like righteous deliverers of justice, of frontier justice, to use the hateful eight term. The thing that gives Shoshana a little more depth and a little more vibrancy for me than is necessarily on the screen. Which, don't get me wrong, there's a lot on the screen. Like, Melanie Laurent's performance is impeccable. The amount that she's able to convey silently is massive. But I was looking up a lot of stuff about the Nazi occupation of France, specifically the Nazi occupation of Paris. And I know that I found that there to this day is still a lot of reticence about exactly how that went down, about how easily the French fell to the Nazis and how ready they were to abet the Nazis in their country and in their city, but also how the yoke of the Nazis started to chafe on them after a while. It seems like Shoshana being called by those guys down to the car, like, come with us or else we're not going to tell you what's going on. That was the kind of thing that happened a lot in Paris around the time of the Nazi occupation. And it made the streets quiet in a way that they weren't before. It really harmed the spirit of Paris. And to me, Shoshana and Marcel are representative of the spirit of occupied Paris. This idea that even if things didn't go down exactly like you'd want them to, you can still take people who seem like they would realistically have lived at that time and depict a story of the French resistance to the Nazi occupation. I think that's an important thing. It's also a story of a Jew being active in her own revenge instead of a Jew passively hiding in a cellar and then having some American come by and give them vengeance, which is what a lot of other World War II movies about the Holocaust have gone with.
It's also about a woman shutting down the persistence method of dating.
Yes.
I think so. I guess.
What's his line? I'm not the kind of man that you say no to.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And that's one of the. I hate that character so much, and I mentioned in the last episode as part of that is because he's just never been told no. He's always gotten everything he wants, and as soon as he is told no once, you find out how disgusting he is. And that's one of the things I really like about him as a villain.
He never seems to realize, even up to the point when she kills him, he never seems to realize exactly how reprehensible she finds him.
Yeah, I'm not going to win this.
Exactly. It's obvious to us, but he thinks she's just kind of playing hard to get.
Yeah.
Whereas we as an audience know, because we know Shoshana better than he does, even though we don't have that much privileged information about her other than like her history, you can tell, even if those two characters were just talking in a context-free scene, you can tell she is not interested. She is constantly taking little digs at him that he doesn't understand. Maybe because, I don't know, French might be a second language for him, but...
I think, so, as we talk about this, I think for me... I think we agree on, like, the aspects of the film, but, like, I think for me, for whatever reason, they just don't work. And I think that same kind of, as you were describing earlier, I think that's one more thing about Inglourious Bastards that makes it fall down a little bit for me, is to get that full enjoyment out of it, once again, it helps to have this context, like... You got to know what it was like to be a Jewish kid in World War II. You got to know what it was like to be in Paris during 1940s.
I mean, not like intimately. You don't have to know it intimately. But I think the film does a good job of communicating those feelings to the audience.
I think that it doesn't do as well as, like, having these contexts in any of these movies is going to help you understand it more. But I think if you don't have that knowledge... Inglourious Bastards doesn't paint the picture of... let me think how to say this. In Inglourious Bastards, you need to know what propaganda is. You need to know that you don't like the Nazis. You need to know what it's... possibly you get more out of it if you think about what it's like to be a kid, a Jewish kid in the 40s, or person from France in the 40s, but, like, say with Django, you don't need to know much about slavery for Django to show you this is fucked up. Like, you don't need any outside knowledge of this guy's covered in scars and wearing a burlap sack and his ankles are bleeding. Yeah. Like, these people are getting whipped. This person lives in a hot box most of the time.
I would argue that even if for some bizarro world you didn't know you weren't supposed to like the Nazis, that Lando at the beginning, I don't know, his Hans for me.
Wanda. I like the Shakespearean thing.
He shot first anyway. But you know immediately you're not supposed to like him. He just butchered an entire family and, like, tricked a poor farmer into being an accomplice.
That's one of the saddest parts. I don't think he tricked him. I think he tricked him. I think that farmer was ready. And I think that's a really depressing part about that scene, because that represents the French...
You guys are getting right into two things I wanted to say.
The French occupancy. The timing of that scene. Like, it's around 1940. He doesn't need to be
tricked for me to still feel awful for him. He did his part of trying to protect his neighbors.
Yes.
He's trying to protect his 3 daughters. Like,
I absolutely agree with that.
He has a terrifying man with a giant pipe in his house.
Yeah, and when that farmer's, like, face breaks down and he breaks down into tears, that is so sad.
I think
it's powerful, I would say.
So for the two things that kind of touches on that don't work for me as well, is that with Hans Landa, he's despicable and you hate him, but you don't, and maybe you don't need to, but I feel like you don't know anything about. You just know he's the Jew hunter. Like, you know you fucking hate him.
I disagree.
But he's a... Not only is he like this he's just... It makes him more despicable, but also more kind of... I don't want to say flat. I would never want to say flat, but he's a bureaucrat.
I have a whole fucking thesis about Landa.
Okay. You go ahead, because mine was just like a catty, well, you don't know about this person either from, like, other movies. So, yeah.
My theory on Landa. Landa is a detective. He sees himself as a detective. He tells us as much in the scene where he's talking to Aldo Raine. Another famous detective, of course, is Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes was...
The pipe!
Exactly.
Oh, the pipe! Layers!
Right. Sherlock Holmes was a creation of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle around the time... I know. I like to condescend to as many people as I possibly can at once. It's the one thing that gets me going anymore. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle invented Sherlock Holmes as not a reaction, but maybe an encapsulation of the kind of scientific breakthroughs that were happening at that time. In the mid to late 1800s, the Victorians were clinging a lot to scientific breakthroughs. You kind of see it with the phrenology stuff in Django a little bit too. That same time period. So much science was happening that you weren't sure what was true or not. That's kind of beside the point. But Sherlock Holmes represents old scientists. Landa represents German scientists who defected when it became clear that the war was about to end.
Migdala.
Exactly. Werner von Braun. So choosing that character to act like and to identify as a detective, as like a Holmesian detective, is such a brilliant touch for me that, I mean, I feel like I know that guy, you know? Not that I know anybody who's like him, but by the end of that movie, I know where he's coming from. I know what he wants. I know what kind of person he is. He's very rule-governed. He has memorized all the social rules. That's why he knows things like... There was some... I don't know. The clinging to procedure that he does, both in the farmhouse scene at the beginning when he's got his books out, he's, lining them up perfectly on the table, and then later when he's eating the pastry with Shoshana, and he's like, up, not before the cream.
I think this actually also connects to his character in Django, where he's seeing those things that are supposed to be European, that are supposed to be indicators of, like, a higher class. Hans does the same thing, where he's relying heavily on niceties and being polite. And then you have the Americans who are awful. Won't bother to speak your language. will not agree to deals that you have made, but you're supposed to feel that they are morally superior because they are not hunting down a whole race of people.
Slightly morally superior. It's not a binary thing. It's not like these people are bad and these people are good. It's like these people are bad, these people are slightly better.
Like, and that's the thing where I feel uncomfortable again. I'm like, should I like them? Because they really like killing people.
They love it.
But they're doing it for a good reason.
It's as close as they get to going to the movies.
Opposite of the Nazis, where they're like doing this very like clinically killing people, but they're doing it for awful reasons.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that pairing.
I hadn't either. Nice. New opinions.
Fucking good.
That's why we do this. So I guess I definitely see that, and I think he's one of the best villains in Despicable. Maybe it's one of those things where it's like I say I don't like it, and then I'm like, but maybe that's what makes it good, and I just don't understand myself because I think they don't explore too much, I feel, into the character. But I said before, maybe that's good. Maybe if they did an Anakin Skywalker on him, you don't want to relate to
it's
Hans.
I don't think there's anything you could relate to.
And I think, but maybe that's why it doesn't work as much for me.
I mean, he's a villain. You're supposed to understand him, but not relate to him. I think that's the kind of fine line that a good Tarantino villain walks.
But I think, and I obviously the only other thing I can draw from is like nerd culture. But like, take a villain
like Bowser.
I think like look at like Magneto. Like that's a very you almost get it.
Magneto's an arguable villain. Like there have definitely been arcs of X-Men where Magneto's the good guy. Well, the dichotomy that was set up in the 60s with X-Men comics was very much the Malcolm X versus Goodnight Leah. Yeah. Was very much the Malcolm X versus
Martin Luther King.
Versus Martin Luther King Jr. I was about to say Malcolm X versus Professor X. Yes, finally.
And I just think, and like that's why I say maybe I don't understand the point, because I feel like
the point of
what makes Hans a great villain is that maybe it's best that he is completely despicable and you don't know why he hates Jews. He doesn't know why he hates Jews.
I don't think he hates them.
I don't think he hates them. I think he, like I said before, he's a casual racist.
And he also knows the game. The game is hunting Jews. It'll help him get ahead in life.
It's what he likes to do.
He's good at it.
He likes being a detective.
It's like a doctor who doesn't want to be a doctor, but he's just really he's good at being a doctor. So
I think, well, maybe a better way to say that is,
or like Beatrix Kiddo. He's really good at killing people.
His just complete despicable selfishness doesn't do as much for me as a villain that is a little more developed. But how about
the
fact that he's not developed is what makes him so good, because he's that disgusting.
I don't think he would agree that he is selfish. Do you remember the part when he's talking on the phone to the OSS commander, who's like the OSS? Do you guys know what the OSS was? No. The OSS was a predecessor to the CIA. The OSS was established in 1942 as, I think, a continuation of another World War II department.
Can we do cuts of this podcast where we just have
give like historical context? I love this shit, and like clearly from the shit that he builds into his movies, Tarantino loves this shit too. So it makes a good gateway to like learning about World War II or learning about Civil War era America. At least that's how I've found it to be over the past couple months. But the OSS, in all these old movies from the late 40s and 50s, whenever someone's doing some real dirt, the OSS sent them out to do it. Like whenever someone's on some whack job fucking mission, that's like, ain't no way you're getting out of this alive. It's always, oh yeah, my commander's from the OSS. It's the Office of fucking, what is it? I think I wrote it down somewhere.
Super Soldiers.
The Office of Super Soldiers. The Office of Strategic Super Soldiers. No, the Office of Strategic Services.
Okay.
And this is a little bit of a digression, but over the years, in like 1947, I think it got shut down and brought back as something else, and then a couple generations of that later, it came back as the CIA, which, you know, would go on to do shit like threaten Martin Luther King Jr. with tapes of him having affairs with other women and shit, like some real despicable shit that the CIA has done. that's where the bastards are coming from, and that's the tradition that Tarantino aligns them with. Is motherfuckers doing the fucking dirt that's gotta get did. You know? What the fuck was I talking about before the OSS?
He's calling them the
He's calling the commander from the OSS, and he's talking about his demands. He's like, blah, blah, blah. It'll be said that I was the one who planted the dynamite in the box. That part's actually true, by the way. Like that little insert of him throwing it in. And then he's like, I want Lieutenant Aldo Rain to get the Congressional Medal of Honor. Actually, I want all of them to get the Medal of Honor. And he like gives Aldo Rain like a little nod, like, yeah, there you go. I'll give you something too. You guys did good. Like, he thinks he's being generous in that moment. He doesn't realize, of course, that the way Aldo Rain would see that Medal of Honor would cause him to, like, I don't know, choke Londa to death with it.
Might be fair enough, but his own perceptions of his selfishness don't mean that it's selfishness or not. So I know. I see what you mean.
I'm just saying he's a more complex character than maybe you're giving him credit for.
That's possible. And I did mean to watch it again once I knew that you two
fucking super fans.
Every time I've talked to Ben, he likes it more. Like, it's been climbing up one slot every time.
Watching it again last night really cemented it there for me.
The last thing
it's his masterpiece.
I can say was like something that didn't work as well for me as in other Tarantino movies is that I love the tension in Tarantino movies, and I think
excuse me, I had the same reaction. Leah, you just had a Melanie Laurent reaction, like when he's telling her about all the people that he killed. She's like, and on the third day.
And I think that there is this futility in all the characters that makes the tension not work. In the farmhouse scene in the beginning, the people in the floorboards, something is wrong and it's not going to end for
you've seen a World War II movie before. You kind of know,
but you don't know they're down there the first time you see it.
Right, and then the camera pans down after they meticulously go through every member of the family. The camera pans down and you see them hiding, and you never in that whole scene I don't think ever see a complete Jewish face.
Yeah, not
once. Shoshana is introduced with her hand over her mouth. Everyone else is in shadows. Then you see like that great shot of their eyes through the floorboards. Yeah. That to me, that's commentary on how other films depict Jews.
The milk scene, I don't think is futile because you don't know the first time you watch it that Shoshana's going to die. You don't know what's going to happen at the movie theater. So it is. I still feel raw with tension.
To me, it's absolutely It's because to me the tension is whether or not the guy's going to give them up. And every time I watch that scene, I still I see the process. I see him being broken down by the brutal efficiency of Londa's approach to this.
I feel that,
and seeing him where he ends up is a pretty intense moment.
I agree that it's. I would say I can pull back a little bit, but I still think that when I watched it, this is not going to end well. Mm. And then the bar scene in the basement. That is not going to end well.
You don't need to be Stonewall Jackson to know you don't want to fight in a fucking basement.
And then when what is the name of the actress?
Bridget von Hammersmark.
When Bridget breaks her leg and Hans is grilling her about it, he's like, that this is full of shit. He fucking knows.
What mountain
Who
did
could
you...
have expected that he was going to strangle her, though?
When he, intense. Lunges across and strangles her. To me, that's the truest expression of who Hans Landa actually is.
Yeah.
That animalistic hatred.
And I think that with his other films, he has this tension, but, you don't... Maybe now that you have all of these movies to look back on, and you see... Quentin Tarantino likes to give you what you want. You look at, for me, it's like Mia in Pulp Fiction. Yeah, I don't know if she's going to die. There's a lot of, what the fuck is going to happen? The pawn shop, I had no fucking clue this was going to happen. What the fuck is going to happen?
I've lived with that movie for so long. I don't really remember the first time I watched Pulp Fiction all the way through just because I was, 9.
Yeah. And I just think that there's no hope for most of the situations where you're rooted, or in another example, Reservoir Dogs. When are they going to find out that Mr. Orange.
Mr. Orange, I think.
Is a
Tim
traitor.
Roth, yeah.
Is he going to live? Is he going to die? You don't know. And I think in Inglourious Bastards, you just have almost every single one of those moments where you're like, someone's trying to keep a secret from the Nazis. You're like, this isn't known. You're done.
Except they do. Nobody ever finds out about Shoshana's plan until it's coming to fruition.
It doesn't have to end happy to end well. Hitler died.
Hitler gets killed like fucking crazy. Like the look on Eli Roth's face as he is murdering Hitler.
Yeah.
Like, cut to Hitler. Hitler's body is being full of bullet holes. Eli Roth looks hateful. Cut back to Eli Roth. Fucking, he's a little more hateful. Hitler's head gets blown up.
Donnie must be so happy because he wasn't expecting to see that. He was expecting to explode.
The look on his face when he sees Hitler walk into the private box is like, what's the line he has when they're trying to get into that box where he's talking to Omar and he's like, all right, when I kill that guy, you're going to have 30 yards to kill that guy. Can you do it? They're such doofuses.
But with all that being said... Go.
They're my favorite pairing.
Omar and Donnie.
I'll just clip that and cut it back into the...
just that part. They're my favorite pairing, and then continue the cast.
But I still...
There's that Tarantino non-linearity.
I love this movie. I love all these movies. And even
I love all my children
all
equally.
these movies that I love...
Bullshit.
Still my fourth favorite.
Yeah.
So, but I think one of the things that makes it so high on the list is that you have all these, like, this isn't gonna fucking work. And then, I think Ben didn't have the same thought as I did when he watched it. But the whole time you're seeing, like, that's not, he doesn't fucking believe you, that's fucking not gonna work.
Yeah,
the whole
constant.
time I'm watching it and thinking, like, so this big plan's not gonna work, because that's not fucking how Hitler died. Like, and then when it does, you're like, oh, okay, fucking cool. And that, to me, is one of the things that makes that movie so great. Is that even though it's not my favorite, I think that just seeing all that, like, no one fucking believes you, don't even bother trying to fool these people, and then the big one at the end does work in a way that's not even historically accurate, that left hook really
I guess the only time I felt like they're not going to believe you was with the Italian accent. It was so funny. When
that's another example where it's just like, what the fuck
Dominique de Coque
are you trying to do? Like, there's just this level of, like...
such a terrible plan. That's the thing about the Bastards. They have terrible plans. Like, they don't know how to do something that is not a suicide mission. Like, their idea of dressing up as Nazis
not spies.
is to, like, stand... Their idea of dressing up as Nazis for a great plan is to stand in the middle of the road and wait for a jeep full of Nazis to come by, and then wait for them to get close enough and just lift up their rifle. Like, that's not a plan. That's
an idea.
That's an idea that you had that happened to work because you're lucky.
So, I don't know what else we can... we went into this not trying to, like, persuade each other, just try to get a better understanding.
I really wanted to talk more about Inglourious Bastards, because I feel like I like that movie more now than I did when we last talked about it.
I'm sad that I didn't get another chance to watch it, and I will say that the best thing about this conversation for me was I agree with everything you guys say. It just doesn't work for me as much as you guys, and I think that helps me understand. And I think I was excited to put Tarantino to bed for a while, but I'll probably still watch Inglourious, and I might I'm
watching Inglourious Bastards again today. Like, I might.
I think I still have one Hateful Eight viewing.
Yeah.
I'm going to steal one of your copies of Pride and Prejudice. I'll watch that.
Two, can I just finish? Can I
please,
just put a coda?
Can he just finish?
Can I just fucking finish? Two facts. I looked these up. I looked these up, and I'm going to put them to use. All right.
Okay.
When I've never noticed this before, but the movies that are on the marquee are meaningful. Right. That's another piece of Shoshana's characterization. The Nazi occupation is forcing her to play German-made films. She does not respect the German-made films. She thinks they're trashy, right? But she is being forced to put these big marquees up. The marquee that she is taking down when Zoller first comes over and talks to her is for the White Hell of Pispaloo, which could also be what Tarantino was referencing with his Django in White Hell, which is what Hateful Eight ended up turning into. But anyway, it is a 1929 silent film that was re-released in 1935, and the Germans dubbed over it. They made it a sound film with German language, and they edited out a Jewish actor. There was a Jewish character in the film The White Hell of Pispaloo. He's in like a tavern or something. He's in a bar, and I guess he's a pretty significant character played by an actor named Curt til. But the Nazis edited him out. So to me, again, that gets at the Inglourious Basterds' wonderful theme of like how people try to manipulate history, how people try to manipulate art to their own ends, hence propaganda, hence the whole thing with the legacy of the Nazis. Like, the idea of not being able to take the uniform off, right? It's that same idea that once you have done this thing, once you have been a Nazi, you can never not be a Nazi. You can never say, oops, like, I guess I'm not a Nazi anymore, guys. No, you will always have been a Nazi. And it's important to remember that, especially now, as like neo-Nazis are getting more and more followers around the country and around the globe. Inglourious Basterds was out in 2009, and neo-Nazis certainly existed then, but it must be pretty fucking disheartening for Quentin Tarantino to have made this whole movie trying to teach the world that Nazis were evil, right? That we should not be okay with having neo-Nazis. We should be fighting tooth and nail to get rid of neo-Nazi culture in our country. And then to have it be a very popular film that a lot of people have seen. You can talk to most people. I think they've mostly seen Inglourious Basterds. But for us to still not have absorbed that message completely must be pretty disheartening. That's the first fact. Second fact, Henri-Georges Clouzot. The first one was the marquee that she's taking down. She does not respect that film. Henri-Georges Clouzot was a director whose films I've never seen, but I looked some of them up and I want to watch some of them. He was making movies under the umbrella of the Nazi, I think it was Continental Films or something. It was a German movie outfit that had been co-opted by the Nazis, and they made a lot of Nazi-sympathizing movies. And he hid little digs at the Nazis in his movies that were made by a essentially Nazi arm of the propaganda wing. So, I don't know. That works really well for me with the character of Shoshana. Of course she would respect that director. Of course, maybe even whoever Madame Mimieux was showed Shoshana. Like, look, this is the way that people are getting their resistance on right now.
Getting their resistance.
You gotta get your resistance on, girl.
Nice. That I like that stuff because I love that. I like that stuff because I love that stuff.
Because I love that stuff. New
I
hit
love,
single from Kurt K5K.
Let me elaborate on that. I love having to watch a movie more than one time to understand it. I love like Easter eggs. Did you notice this? That means something. Yeah. I love that, and I think every Tarantino movie has that. And now that we've walked through this conversation, I think there's just the most of it in Inglourious Basterds. A lot of this is a great movie, but having this context makes it a lot better. And I think that just how I enjoy movies, I think I'm maybe a little... I just like it to be a little more on the head, I think. I like to kind of have more of it in the movie with that stuff peppered in. And I think maybe Inglourious Basterds relies a little more on that other stuff, which is really nice stuff. But
this is really good stuff.
Then they spoon feed you in the movie. Maybe I just like being spoon fed a little more.
For me, stop it with the whole Curtis is dumb fucking bit that we do on this show. You're not dumb. For me, the like highest ideal of art, the highest ideal. I'm not gonna say some shit like that. One of the great ideals that art can strive for is for every aspect of it to be meaningful, for nothing to be accidental. And I feel like Inglourious Basterds is probably the Tarantino movie that does that most for me, which is why I like it the most.
I can see that.
Any given line in Inglourious Basterds, I can think back and think like, well, it means this in the moment, but it also tells us this about the character, and it lines up with this other line they say later. Like the moment when so it's right after Londa has done the thing with the shoe with Bridget von Hammersmark, and he says, if the shoe fits, right? He does that saying. And then he's talking to Aldo Rain, and he has that line, what's the American saying about shoes and feet? Looks like the shoe's on the other foot. Yeah, I was thinking that myself. So the fact that, like, he's still thinking about shoes, so he thinks of that saying.
And that with the layer, yes, that with the layer of Tarantino feet.
Yes, with the layer, like the moment when Londa says to Bridget, give me your foot. And she's like, what the fuck? And the audience also is like, what the fuck? Tarantino, really? Like, you're really going to do this?
Really going for it, huh?
Really going for it? What, am I watching Death Proof again?
We see him find the shoe before that.
We do see him find the shoe.
So we know.
So we know, but I feel like we can identify more strongly with Bridget von Hammersmark in that moment than we can with Londa.
I'm glad we're still friends after this.
Yeah, me too. I was worried about it.
We don't have any other friends because I mean, I assume you're going to edit this, but they just listened to like 3 hours of us talking about it.
It's really not going to be edited that much. Maybe I'll like try to make you guys look like dicks. Like, try to
edit out every other word that I said.
We are at 2 hours and 38 minutes.
All right, let's get to. Are we any final thoughts about Bastards? I feel like I have said my piece about Bastards. I have expressed the full extent of my single-minded devotion to that movie. I've already no, I'm just saying maybe I have Kill Bill a little farther down because I've already.
There's a fourth page of notes.
Oh shit! On our Kill Bill episode, I already fucking waxed poetic about all the shit that I love about Kill Bill forever. And like Pulp Fiction, I feel like I've been living my life in such a way that I just do that on a daily basis. Just wax poetic about Pulp Fiction constantly. But those are the three perfect movies that Quentin Tarantino has made.
Any final thoughts for you, Leah?
Not really final thoughts, just one more thing about Inglourious Bastards that I wanted to
You're gonna get Ben going again.
You are!
Just that not final scene, but the scene where Shoshana and I'm still gonna call him Ewan McGregor look-alike shoot each other.
I don't think he looks that much like Luke.
I think he does. But the Tarantino just loves that shot of people dying across the room from each other.
The music in that scene is so good.
Yeah, and I would say that he has taken that idea that he had from Res Dogs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
God damn it.
There's a particular reason why I'm saying that, and I will tell you after. But he's taken that idea he had to have that view of them on the floor and really perfected it in this yin-yang, Shoshana good, he's bad, red dress, Nazi uniform, beautiful, beautiful situation.
She represents movies in that moment, and then she literally goes on to be represented by a movie. Marcel.
What have I done?
Marcel's moment when he says goodbye to her. I forget what exactly he says, but it's his last thing that he's going to say to her. There's some German word for it, but it's the lover's death, right? It's the Romeo and Juliet. It's the I looked this at Liebesmark. I don't know. That's totally wrong, but there is a literary term for it. He doesn't say goodbye to her. He says goodbye to her image and her voice on the movie screen. He says goodbye to her giant face. And then there's a bunch of Wizard of Oz stuff that goes along with that. But yeah, that's a beautiful moment. Marcel saying goodbye to her before he does this thing, before he burns the film. It's beautiful.
My final thoughts are Tarantino good. Still like Tarantino.
Yes, it's good. It's good to revisit Tarantino in such a concentrated way and to find that wow, shit, he actually is that good.
My final thoughts are that I need to watch it again because I now have a much deeper understanding of where you guys come from. From when we started this, or when you first told me that Inglourious Basterds was year number one, I was like, what the fuck? That was okay. But now I think I get it more. But I'm looking at my list of Pulp Fiction, Django, and Kill Bill, and I don't know how.
You can't get rid of one of them.
I don't know.
I respect how high you have Django on that list. I think it's an imperfect movie, but I totally understand where you're coming from.
So we have one last little bit that we can talk about
just
for a couple minutes.
Just a little come down from the...
What is about to happen?
No. I wish I had a button that played music and
the Ironsides music from Kill Bill. Yeah.
I think we were just gonna talk about a little bit of the cultural impact of Tarantino.
Good and bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was kind of what you came on this originally for, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote that paper in high school, I think, just so that I could write a paper about Tarantino films.
That's fair.
And it was such a broad subject. It was my history teacher was write something that influenced America. So I happily watched a bunch of movies and then typed that up. I'm a little worried about the input.
No, believe me,
No, don't worry.
I
I have very light. I looked up a couple movies that people generally agree would not have existed without Tarantino.
Now, I'm just going to start this off where I don't think this was ever Tarantino's intention. This is not his fault. But teenage boys just, like, loving violence and loving killing things and just, like, thinking shooting people is cool. Definitely an outcome from those movies. Just, like, not thinking about it at all. Just being like, yeah, shooting people, strangling actresses, super cool.
The violence against Bridget von Hammersmark, sorry. The violence against Bridget von Hammersmark is stunningly cruel at times. Like when Aldo Rain has his finger in her leg. That's horrible. What?
It's a gruesome scene.
Yeah,
and
it's really awful.
Like, I can see that finger going into the...
The, like, squelch as he puts his finger into the bullet hole. But it's exactly the kind of thing that would have happened in, like, one of those movies, but heightened a little bit. Tarantino puts his own little twist on it. Yeah, like, people watching the movies and, like, watching the scene in the theater in Inglourious Basterds and thinking, like, this is awesome!
Yeah.
Well, it's like, well, it's cool because they're Nazis, but, like, they're still getting killed.
I think Ben
Like
has just proven my point from earlier.
Again, I don't think we disagreed as much. I think it was a very subtle distinction that we were trying to make there.
I think for me, and it's one. It kind of ties into one of the questions I had, but not super. But I don't know. I think the violence in Tarantino movies, while so heightened, is like separated by enough like deep dialogue that I don't think the people. I'll use a couple movies as an example. Like, I feel like the people that like, say, Boondock Saints or Scarface, that love that.
Hey, Scarface is a good movie.
Scarface is a fantastic movie, but
don't compare it to Boondock Saints.
but in the sense that a lot of 8th graders walking around with Scarface backpacks, like, I don't think the people that love the violence and gangster movies and just criminal movies, I don't think there's enough of what they're looking for in Tarantino movies.
I think that it's still appealing because the violence is so impactful, and maybe, like, I just feel awful being like, maybe they don't think about it, but, like, maybe they don't look for the different layers of meaning, and they're like, oh, I like this, I must like it because it's so violent, and haven't really delved into it. It's
possible, too, I would think, that maybe they don't realize the reason they like the violence so much is because they don't realize how slowly it was built up, and...
I think that the type of people that you're talking about, and I think we can safely say that the only reason they're able to interpret Tarantino's movies the way that they do is because they're ignoring broad swaths of them, right? They're watching these movies and not absorbing anything until it gets to the point where they're watching Tarantino movies like they're pornography.
Yeah, their English teachers have failed them.
Exactly. They don't know how to read a complex text.
Yep. These are the kids that watch, like, cum shot compilations. They don't need...
Yeah, they don't need the build up. They don't need any reasons.
The release over and over and over.
They're not necessarily bad people, but they do have a certain intellectual immaturity that sometimes maybe comes with them being literal 8th graders. But sometimes
no
it's like...
offense to people that like cum shot compilations.
Or 8th graders.
Yeah, or 8th graders. But if you're 26 and you're still watching Tarantino movies that way...
Yeah.
I don't know, Not that I'm speaking about anybody in particular, but they're the hypothetical, like, college student who's watching a Tarantino movie in the same way that they were watching it when they were an 8th grader. I do think that it's pretty cool that Tarantino movies play to the crowd so much,
Yeah.
I swear to God, I'm going to make this comparison every single episode, but it's the Shakespeare thing again. People are always like, yeah, Shakespeare played to the cheap seats, and he also played to the people who would be sitting in the balcony. He had things in his plays for both sides. And I think that Tarantino draws from that same storytelling tradition of, like, there is no segment of the audience whom you can treat with disdain. You need to accept them all into the fold. And just hope that the people in the cheap seats are at least watching attentively enough to understand why you're doing the stuff that you're doing. But if you have to give people the chance to not understand it, to make understanding it a valuable experience. Again, that's one of the things that I think Tarantino does really well.
Thanks. That was nice.
Thanks.
Do you guys think that, like, a common moviegoer knows... I don't know maybe the best way to phrase this, but, like, either knows what a Quentin Tarantino movie is or really likes a Tarantino movie even if they don't know it's a Tarantino movie? Or do you think that his films are mostly appreciated by people that are already saying to themselves, like, I like movies, I want to learn more about movies?
Django Unchained made $500 million.
Okay, that answers that question.
Hateful Eight did not do that well.
Your question has some merit.
I think it's definitely worth talking about.
When I think about the mainstream, I think about, like, what would moms at a PTA think of this movie? Because that's what I think about, like, the most mainstream demographic is. And I think that the violence would turn them off from watching it, which I don't think is a good thing, but...
Yeah, it is the way it is. And in fact, we kind of talked about this with Kill Bill. Is like, if anyone... Quentin Tarantino's movies are not necessarily for everyone. Like, if someone has trauma in their past, maybe a Quentin Tarantino movie is not the best thing for them. Yeah. If you have a lot of trouble watching screen violence, Quentin Tarantino is not for you. That's fine. Like, nothing against a person who would not be able to watch a Quentin Tarantino movie because it's going to trigger them.
Yeah.
Like, trigger some anxiety or something. But to your point about, like, the general movie-going audience, I think that Quentin Tarantino has a lot of hold, maybe not over the PTA crowd, but over, like, younger people. I think that Quentin Tarantino has a lot of cachet, and I think that he's getting more mainstream as time goes by, and people kind of pick up, like, wow, this guy's been making a lot of movies for a long time.
Yeah.
And they're all really, really good.
I think that he kind of... I think he might be a good middle, like a high schooler can watch like I did, a Tarantino movie, and that is kind of like there are certain types of movies that you kind of watch when you're a teenager that serve the purpose of, you want to see something fucked up, like, and then you watch Cannibal Holocaust or you watch A Clockwork Orange. These movies that aren't presented to you by your parents, that the purpose when you first watch them is you want to see something your fucking parents won't show you, except for Ben, whose mom made him watch Pulp Fiction when he was 6 years old. And that gets you into cinema, and then there are different ways you can pursue that. I think, like, you can, as examples, you could follow the Scorsese path. You can watch, like, deeper movies with these themes, or you're pursuing this path of, like, fucked up movies. So you watch Audition, you...
Kind of modern exploitation film.
And I think that's really accurate, because the first time that I watched Kill Bill, it was introduced by a high school student who's still living in his 8th grade mind, who's like, watch this violent film.
He was like, you want to see something fucked up.
Did you see that? You saw her brain.
I think I really like... Tarantino is definitely one of my favorite directors. In our very first episode where we talked about the Tarantino idea, I kind of lumped him in a way with, like, Kevin Smith, where he's kind of like that first, like, what? That was like disgust.
Ben just had an instinctual twitch that I could tell that he held back.
They make a fascinating comparison point to each other. I see what you're saying.
Only in the sense that you are getting interested in cinema, and you say, like, I really liked this movie, and then, that guy makes other movies, so if I want to chase that feeling, I don't have to go too far.
No, I agree with that, because I feel like my Kill Bill Tarantino phase and my Kevin Smith Dogma, what else is this? And, like, watching Mallrats phase were very close together.
Same exact thing for me. I was in love with both of those directors at the same exact point in my life. One of them has since fallen away, but I am currently...
fuck the Hateful Eight, right?
I know, fucking Hateful Eight sucks so much, I can't wait for Jersey Boys, or whatever the fuck.
That is one thing and I like that for... I almost think, like, when I used to feel a little... Kind of the same thing when we started this. I think I said I felt a little guilty about saying Tarantino is, like, my favorite director, because he is that, like, entry-level film buff favorite, and now I can't even pull a more obscure, like even
P.T. Anderson is is another one that kind of borders on very popular.
Even I think in terms of like pretentiousness, you could even say like Kubrick is probably that next level up,
or like Christopher Nolan.
Yeah,
Christopher Nolan's another level down from that for me.
But I think that's probably for me the biggest impact that happened to me, or I've seen culturally for other people that also happened to, is that he gets you into things. Tarantino has the ability to, you can watch a movie and enjoy it, but you enjoy it so much that you're kind of like, I feel like watching this one now, just because of the merit of how good the first one you saw was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that's about it. Are we ready to wrap this thing up?
I think it's time.
Yeah. We swore if we went over 3 hours, we'd shut the podcast down.
So, I think we can put this to bed until Tarantino makes another movie, and then we'll do it all over again.
I mean, I am going to be rewatching Inglourious Bastards later today, but yeah, we can put it to bed on the podcast, certainly. So
I think worth mentioning for future episodes of the podcast, I don't think we meant to get into this big of a thing early on.
We kind of planned this out.
We didn't really establish a norm before we went into a 4-part epic about 8 films.
What have we talked about? How long have we talked about Quentin Tarantino movies altogether? Like 10 hours?
Gotta be
at least 10 hours.
Yeah.
It's fucked up.
So I think for moving on for future episodes, we're gonna see more one-parters.
I think we have a better idea of how big a topic to tackle for our hour tops podcast.
A 1 hour length podcast moving forward.
Next week we'll be talking about Harvest Moon.
So yeah, I think that I don't really know. I'm kind of at a weird, I can't find a natural segue from that topic to...
You want to just do the plugs?
Plugs.
Leah, thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for being here. This was a blast.
You're welcome.
Please, where can we find you or hear you?
So I don't think this will be out by my next show, which is on Monday at Blue at 8 p.m. Worst day of the week. But then I have a show at Rising Tide at 7 p.m. Then I'm at Blue again on the 12th. And then I'm at Laugh Shack at Lincoln's on the 15th. Then I'm on the Women's of New England Comedy Festival at Empire at 7 on, what is that? That's July the 8th. Yeah. And then I am all the way down in that Biddeford on the 27th for Cowbell Burger Bar. And I'm supposed to be on the Methinks podcast with Jamie Rue, which he hasn't gotten back to me, which is not a dig at Jamie.
Jamie, if you're listening,
just saying,
we don't need any fucking podcast beef coming out of this. All right?
On the bright side, you will have or have not been on that by the time this is out. So.
Yeah, I was just going to say, either way, you should listen to Methinks. They talk about main topics, hence M-E Thinks.
Hey.
And they interview important main people. Not that I'm an important main person. I was just supposed to be on there for banter.
Cool. So do you have any social media that you like to plug?
Nope.
Okay. So, cool. And Ben's still on Facebook.
I'm still on Facebook. You can hear me on this podcast again in 2 more weeks.
And as always, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at KurtCake5K. Also, I'm on... I started the Spotify thing, and I haven't really made many playlists, but I do have some playlists on Spotify that might be relevant to our show. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to do some music episodes.
Yeah, we're going to try to get into a rotation, I think.
Yeah.
Like movie,
focusing on
video game, music.
Types of media.
Every 10, I'll bring in a book or something.
Does that mean I have to read?
I'll give you the digest version.
Sick.
Yeah.
So I guess that is about going to wrap it up. Thank you again, Leah.
Yeah,
thanks,
it was awesome
Leah.
being here.
It was good.
Yeah. Have a good one, everybody.
Bye.
Peace.